now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the State of Israel, I wish to express our appreciation to the men and women serving the UN peacekeeping operations. We recognize their dedication and commitment and extend our utmost respect to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the pursuit of peace and stability worldwide. Madam President, peacekeeping missions today face unprecedented and rapidly evolving challenges. The reality on the ground has fundamentally shifted. Non-state actors and terrorist organizations now exploit the international system, masquerading as NGOs and non-profit organizations to deceive the global community. The systematically misuse of civilian infrastructure, turning schools, hospitals, and even UN sites into command centers and weapons depots. These groups not only disregard the safety and welfare of civilians, but also put UN peacekeepers in harm's way, flagrantly violating international law and Security Council resolutions by doing this. The UN faces a serious dilemma when peacekeeping forces operate in an environment where non-state actors wield significant influence. This issue cannot be ignored or downplayed. It must be confronted head-on with full transparency, public reporting of violations, and holding host countries accountable. The UN must also ensure that non-state actors that threaten peacekeepers face meaningful consequences. At the same time, the primary mission of UN peacekeeping cannot be reduced to self-preservation. While we recognize that force protection is crucial, it should not become the overriding objective, one that prevents peacekeepers from fulfilling their mandates. Madam President, when UNIFIL was established, its role was clear: to maintain peace and security along the Blue Line. However, its ability to fulfill this mandate has become increasingly obstructed, first and foremost by Hezbollah, an internationally designated terrorist organization. UNIFIL's core mission is to monitor the cessation of hostilities and prevent hostile activities in its area of operations. Yet for years, Hezbollah built up its military capabilities within UNIFIL's jurisdiction, openly launching rockets and missiles in close proximity to UNIFIL positions for over the last year. By obstructing UNIFIL's operations, Hezbollah sends a clear message of defiance, not just to UNIFIL's mission, but to the entire United Nations. Madam President, a challenging situation such as this makes the accurate reports from peacekeepers, which reflect the realities on the ground, even more critical. Reporting cannot be limited to a series of disconnected incidents. It must go deeper, identifying patterns, analyzing trends, and presenting clear conclusions. Without this, the international community is left with a distorted picture that does not accurately reflect the reality of the situation. Equally critical is the integrity of peacekeeping reporting. The discovery of large stockpiles of weapons in southern Lebanon during the war, stockpiles that were never reported prior to the conflict, raises serious concerns about whether UNIFIL has effectively implemented its mandate. Peacekeeping reports must reveal the full truth and not conceal it. The Security Council must unequivocally condemn Hezbollah's escalating attacks and formally designate it as a terrorist organization. To conclude, Madam President, around the world, we're witnessing a troubling pattern: the growing influence of non-state terrorist organizations replicating this dangerous model of Hezbollah in other regions of the world. We call upon the Security Council to demand truthful, comprehensive reporting on threats to international peace and security, to hold those who obstruct peacekeeping missions accountable, especially terrorist organizations, and to ensure that peacekeepers can operate without interference in full execution of their mandates. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Israel for the statement, and
And now give the floor to the representative of Jordan.
السيدة الرئيسة يشرفني أن ألقي هذا البيان نيابة عن المجموعة.
Madam President, I have the honor of taking the floor on behalf of the Arab group. At the outset, I would like to congratulate you, Madam President, and wish you every success as you preside over the Council this month of March. I thank you for convening this meeting, which is of great importance so that we can strengthen the role of peace operations. I thank the Secretary General of the United Nations for the insightful briefing we heard that enriched today's debate. In a world that is experiencing an increasing number of conflicts and challenges, the role of UN peace operations is a cornerstone of peace and security throughout the world, with the goal of protecting civilians and strengthening governance as well as supporting development in countries suffering from the consequences of these conflicts. We would like to affirm the importance of the role of PKOs, not just a military role. For its operations, they tried to support integrated political solutions to address the root causes of conflict through a peace-based dialogue. Madam President, we recently observed a reduction in the effectiveness of PKOs, which has a negative impact on prospects for peace and addressing conflicts throughout the world. The Arab group would like to sound the alarm as to the serious impact of these withdrawals, which could have a serious impact on the various regions affected and undermine peace and security. We must address this issue quickly and effectively. We recall that the main goal of this organization, when it was established more than almost 80 years ago, was international peace and security, and that is the very raison d'etre of this organization. That is why we cannot accept any measures that might undermine this role of the UN. It is our duty to promote the main responsibilities of the UN in this regard. Ending conflict and bringing about peace throughout the world. That is the only way to attain sustainable development and to strengthen human rights throughout the world in the broad sense of the term. And that is why the Arab group underscores the need to provide political and financial support from the General Assembly and the Security Council in order to make peace operations successful and to guarantee their effectiveness and their stability. We insist on the need for all states to shoulder their responsibilities when it comes to financial contributions in a timely manner to guarantee the success of peace operations. In addition, our group underscores the need to overcome political disagreements within the Council. This is a fundamental prerequisite to guarantee the effectiveness of peace operations. We therefore recommend that the Council strengthen cooperation with other stakeholders, including regional organizations. We call for improved representation on a geographic level that would be more equitable, especially for troop and police contributing countries when it comes to decision-making posts, whether we're talking about PKOs or at the headquarters of the UN. The Arab group is concerned by the many threats and attacks against blue helmets. We condemn the repeated Israeli attacks on UNIFIL and at its headquarters and its various positions. We commend the sacrifice carried out by UNIFIL, which has stayed in place despite the attacks against Lebanon. We call for the implementation of the resolution 1701 of the Security Council. We call on all parties to guarantee the safety and security of members of peace operations and hold perpetrators responsible. We must call on Israel to withdraw from all occupied parts of Lebanese territory up to internationally recognized territory borders in accordance with the ceasefire agreement. We underscore the importance of the role of UNIFIL up until the withdrawal of the Israeli army from all Lebanese territory that is currently occupied, and we underscore as well the need to follow up the implementation of Resolution 1701. It is high time to take part in the ministerial meeting on peacekeeping, which will take place in May 2025 in Berlin, to take this opportunity to strengthen our capacities and discuss the future of PKOs as well as ways of adapting them so they can address the challenges of our time. Thank you, President.
And I now give the floor to the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to make this statement on behalf of the plurinational state of Bolivia. We thank you for convening this debate on the strengthening and adaptation of United Nations peacekeeping operations in order to address the evolving challenges of our time. We're happy that the Council has opened up this forum for reflection, particularly with a view to the upcoming ministerial meeting on peacekeeping in Berlin. Bolivia reaffirms our unswerving commitment to peace, guided by Article 10 of our political constitution, which declares that we are a pacifist state that promotes a culture of peace and categorically rejects wars of aggression. However, we are fully aware of the fact that the attempts of certain hegemonic powers to exert their influence, be that through economic blockades or unilateral coercive measures or political interference, continue to undermine confidence in multilateral frameworks. These practices erode development, they exacerbate inequalities, and very often they worsen situations that peacekeeping operations are meant to resolve. The importance of the primacy of policy in peacekeeping operations is undeniable. Missions need clearly defined mandates that are very specific for each particular context, where priority is given to inclusive negotiations, where there's protection, a guarantee of protection for civilians, and where there's transparent coordination with regional entities. Missions must also be equipped to rapidly respond to emerging threats, including deliberate attempts to obstruct humanitarian assistance. Unfortunately, we see a clear example of this in the occupied Palestinian territory, with the blocking of urgently needed aid, including the prohibition on the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA. This is making a humanitarian crisis already complicated even worse. UNRWA, for very many years, has been an indispensable resource for millions of Palestinians. Its suspension or reduction in any part of the occupied territory deprives girls, boys and families of essential services, education, medical care and emergency assistance. These restrictions violate international humanitarian law. They contravene the obligations of the occupying power, and they contradict the spirit and the letter of relevant Security Council resolutions. Peacekeeping operations cannot prosper where humanitarian access is systematically obstructed. The Council must be unequivocal in demanding that vital aid reach the civilians that depend on it. A successful peacekeeping operation is one that safeguards all the time the impartiality and independence of humanitarian actors, including UNRWA, and which defends the rights and dignity of affected communities. This holistic approach must also involve the host authorities, civil society and local communities as key actors, guaranteeing that the mandates are people-centered and respond to changing circumstances. With a view to the future, Bolivia calls upon the Security Council and the Secretary-General to include these lessons in upcoming reviews and at the Ministerial Conference on Peacekeeping in Berlin in 2025. And we call upon the international community to oppose any measure which would hinder the provision of impartial humanitarian assistance. By addressing structural injustices, by promoting inclusive political dialogue and guaranteeing humanitarian unrestricted access, peacekeeping operations can bring us closer to a reality where peoples, including the Palestinian population, are able to exercise their right to self-determination free of fear and misery. In conclusion, Bolivia is prepared to work with all partners towards an international order that is genuinely multipolar and humane, where cooperation prevails over division and where peacekeeping operations really do serve the interests of those that most require their services. Thank you.
The representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegation of Ukraine is grateful to Denmark's presidency for organizing this important high-level debate, as well as to all briefers for their insightful remarks. Ukraine has aligned with the statement of the delegation of the European Union on behalf of its member states. For over 75 years, UN peace operations have played an essential role in maintaining international peace and security. However, as global security challenges evolve, so too must peace operations. The Pact for the Future, adopted in September last year, underscores the urgent need for adaptable, responsive, and effective UN peace operations. Ukraine fully supports the call for peace operations to be guided by people-centered, context-specific political strategies. It is imperative that peacekeeping mandates are realistic, flexible, and sequenced, reflecting the primacy of political solutions and the necessity of civilian protection. As highlighted in Security Council Resolution 2594, transitions must be understood as strategic processes that begin well before the end of a mission and focus on sustaining peace. Recent events, such as the escalation of hostilities in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo and Abyei, including the attacks against MONUSCO's personnel and detention of UNISFA personnel by the Rapid Support Forces, accordingly demonstrate that the critical need to improved agility and rapid response mechanisms. We cannot but recall the importance of the adoption of UN Security Council Resolution 2719, which authorized support for African Union-led peace support operations from UN-assessed contributions. Madam President, before Russian Federation's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine was a steadfast contributor to UN peacekeeping, actively participating in 26 peacekeeping operations worldwide. Ukrainian military personnel served with distinction in missions across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, including in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, Lebanon, Cyprus, and Kosovo. Our servicemen and women provided crucial support for stability, humanitarian assistance, and conflict resolution in some of the most challenging operational environments. While our nation's defense forces are currently engaged in defending our country from the Russian aggressor, Ukraine remains committed to the principles and future of UN peace operations. We are also considering a phased return of our qualified personnel, such as staff officers and observers, to UN missions once conditions allow. While supporting collaboration between the UN and important regional arrangements, Ukraine reaffirms that any cooperation between the UN and the Collective Security Treaty Organization is unacceptable. Peacekeeping efforts must remain free from the influence of aggressor states to preserve the credibility and effectiveness of UN peace operations. Madam President, finally, we encourage the Secretary General to champion innovative, modular, and integrated approaches to peacekeeping, rooted in diplomacy, guided by political solutions, and equipped to meet contemporary security threats. The Security Council must ensure that UN peace operations continue evolving to meet new realities while upholding the fundamental principles of international law and UN Charter. Ukraine stands ready to contribute to these discussions and to the broader efforts to strengthen UN peace operations in an era of unprecedented challenges. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ukraine for the statement.
The 9,884th meeting of the Security Council is resumed. I now give the floor to the representatives of the Philippines.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Philippines is a founding member of the United Nations. As the UN turns 80 years old, our conviction and commitment to multilateralism, rule of law, and the core tenets of the UN Charter remain resolute. The Philippines has steadfastly contributed to UN peacekeeping operations for over 6 decades. Since 1963, we have deployed almost 15,000 Filipino peacekeepers to 21 UN peacekeeping and special political missions. For the year 2024 to 2025, we have contributed over $2 million to 11 missions. We are now undertaking concrete efforts to increase our peacekeeping footprint. Noting the Secretary General's new agenda for peace and our shared commitments as laid out in the Pact for the Future, the Philippines underlines the following for a resilient and effective future of UN peace operations. First, the need to strengthen the Peacebuilding Commission, particularly its convening power and advisory role vis-à-vis the Security Council, recognizing that peacekeeping is a key tool for peace building. The Peacebuilding Architecture Review this year provides a critical opportunity to strengthen peacebuilding tools. We echo the need for PBC to actively engage in strategic partnerships with IFIs, multilateral development banks, and even regional development banks to support states in need, addressing root causes of conflict and strengthening local capacities. Second, we call for increased, equal, and meaningful participation of women in uniformed roles. Gender perspectives need to be integrated in all aspects of peacekeeping across command levels. The Pasay Declaration on Women, Peace and Security, or WPS, the outcome of the first international conference on women, peace and security held in Pasay, Philippines last October, elaborates on this important role of women in peace efforts. Third, protection of civilians' mandates must be flexible to address the diverse threats that civilians face. This adaptability is crucial for the effectiveness of peace operations in any context. Fourth, the safety of peacekeepers who are operating against a backdrop of complex political and security situations will always be of paramount importance. And fifth, there is a need to strengthen cooperation and partnership with regional and sub-regional organizations in accordance with Chapter 8 of the UN Charter. These partnerships bring together diverse perspectives, expertise, and resources. We commend in this regard the adoption of Security Council 2719 of 2023 on the strategic partnerships between the UN and the AU. Madam President, peacekeeping missions should be accorded with adequate and predictable resources. The liquidity crisis facing the UN, among others, is thus a major concern, while highlighting the need for the efficient use of limited resources through synergies, cooperation, and the focus on effectiveness. The Philippines has contributed and will continue to contribute valuable personnel and financial resources for the attainment, advancement, and enjoyment of peace for present and future generations. We are ready and prepared to play an even more active and constructive role in the UN Security Council if elected for a non-permanent seat for the period 2027 to 2028. Thank you, Madam President.
And I thank the representatives of the Philippines for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Italy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for convening today's open debate. Italy aligns itself with the statement to be delivered by the European Union, and I would like to add the following remarks in my national capacity. Madam President, peacekeeping is often referred to as a multilateralism in action. Since it joined the United Nations, Italy has championed this idea by dedicating its steadfast commitment, top-level peacekeepers, and state-of-the-art technologies to UN peacekeeping missions worldwide, becoming the largest contributor of troops among Western countries to UN peacekeeping. Italy's commitment to peacekeeping is rooted in the belief that peace operations must aim not only to preserve, but also to build peace. Today, we are used to adapt peacekeeping to new security threats and also to a different geopolitical context. But over 75 years of successes must give us the courage to look to the future with confidence and to ask ourselves not if, but how UN peacekeeping will continue to play a decisive role. Our work should focus on two major dimensions. The first is the political dimension of peacekeeping, as a peacekeeping operation is effective and sustainable as long as it is supported by a shared political will, starting with the Security Council. This shared political will must ensure that any operation is adequately resourced, has clear and realistic mandates, commensurate with the conditions on the ground, and operates in synergy with host countries. Such political will should be forged at the very outset of peacekeeping operations, also by involving the relevant regional organizations in the decision-making process, and should then remain steady and consistent during implementation. In this regard, Italy acknowledges Africa's significant and increasing contributions to international peace and security. The continent has demonstrated admirable courage and leadership in addressing global challenges. We therefore welcome the landmark 2719 resolution on AU-led peace support operations. The second dimension concerns the operational effectiveness of peacekeeping. Resources and objectives must be up to the new security challenges in highly complex scenarios. We commend the Secretariat for the effective efforts it has long undertaken to this end, also on the technological and digital front. High attention must be paid also to the training of peacekeepers, who are required to possess increasingly complex and diversified skills and professionalism. While adaptation is critical, we have already sought the foundation and the best practice to build on. UNIFIL, for example, has developed over the years a successful model based on respect for the local culture, impartiality, credibility, and closeness to the civilian population, thus becoming one of the most stable UN peacekeeping missions. Let me recall in this regard the long-standing contribution by Italy, which provides the United Nations with top-level training facilities, such as the Center of Excellence for Stability Policy Units, which over the years has trained to the highest standards over 15,000 police officers from 127 countries and 7 international organizations. Madam President, reconciling these two dimensions, political sustainability and operational effectiveness, will be one of the main challenges for the future of peacekeeping operations. Focus mandates tailored for specific situations might help to match goals with the resources actually available, also facilitating synergies with host countries. At the same time, we should not lower the level of ambition, nor to hesitate or give up on the prospect of launching new peacekeeping operations whenever they are necessary. With the right adjustments and fruitful integration with peace-building activities, peacekeeping can continue to be a key engine of peace and stability, as it has been since the birth of the United Nations. And Italy will continue to be its resolute, relentless supporter. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Italy for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for giving me the floor. Portugal thanks Denmark for convening this timely debate, and also the Secretary General and Ms. Russo for their insightful remarks. Portugal aligns with the statement by the European Union. Madam President, peace operations are part of this Council course business, and their effectiveness should be at the heart of its members' concerns. This is my first point. We need the strong political will of a united Council as a starting point for any peace operation, but also throughout the complete strategic planning of the operations, which must be duly pondered amongst all relevant stakeholders. It's crucial to promote greater unity in supporting peace process among the various actors. Only the joint consideration of multiple inputs may provide the Council with an overview of the peace continuum variables, the commitment of host countries, the sensitivities of local communities, the assessment of ground conditions, the predictable resources, and the evaluation of foreseeable peace-building outcomes by the PBC. Protection of civilians must remain at the core of peace operations that should be planned to ensure the safe entry of humanitarian aid and physical security. Also, we must look at the way missions communicate with local communities, host governments, and other stakeholders. Adequate, easy to understand, and updated communication is key to ensure the security of both personnel and civilians. Madam President, my second point, a comprehensive architecture that encompasses prevention, peacekeeping, and peacebuilding with realistic mandates and clear objectives and timelines provides better adaptation to the different phases of the peace continuum. On those aspects, we can control, work in advance in ways to better adapt, and therefore be better prepared to react. The UN should consider integrated approaches, focus on mediation and political solutions that prioritize the prevention of conflicts, namely by supporting national prevention strategies in line with the Action for Peacekeeping Agenda and New Agenda for Peace. The UN should also keep thinking outside the box and move forward on the implementation of UNSC Resolution 2719, which provides a framework for more effective African Union-led peace operations. Raising awareness of the climate, peace, and security nexus, namely of the existential risk associated with sea level rising, is crucial, along with promoting an inclusive agenda that empowers the effective participation of human and youth. Third and last point, we need an adequate training of military, police, and civilian personnel in UN peace operations. We value the police component of peace operations, given the increase of urban conflicts and the efforts to reduce the environmental footprint of missions, and greater awareness of local sensitivities, including by mitigating language barriers, may lead to a better acceptance of peace operations mandates. As we look ahead to this year's peacekeeping ministerial and continue to reflect on the future of peacekeeping and the peace-building architecture review, we welcome the study commissioned by the DPO on the future of peacekeeping, new models and related capabilities. It should guide us in the way forward. Madam President, concluding, as a committed peacekeeper, which has contributed over 20,000 personnel to UN peacekeeping missions over the last 65 years, and as a candidate for a non-permanent seat on the Security Council for 27-28, Portugal will continue to advocate for an integrated approach in peace operations centered on 3 Ps: prevention, partnership, and protection. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Portugal for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
Señora Presidenta.
Madam President, in today's world, the UN is subject to frequent criticism, saying that it's absent when it comes to taking decisions that will affect the most serious international problems. That may be true, but we should not forget the multiple actions that this organization carries out on a daily basis around the world. And amongst those positive actions, and despite limitations, the peacekeeping operations are par excellence one of the clearest demonstrations of the relevance and the benefits represented by the United Nations. These operations are an essential tool in the ongoing work of maintaining international peace and security, and a clear demonstration of the fact that the world is a better place thanks to multilateralism. It's been 8 decades now since the deployment of the first peacekeeping operation, and there have been adaptations to complex and multidimensional challenges along the way. The involvement of non-state actors and mercenaries in conflicts, the proliferation of weapons and external funding for armed groups, and the potential malicious use of AI, and the limitation of economic and human resources are amongst the greatest challenges for reconfiguring and developing peacekeeping operations. And now, if we can address these challenges, assuming we could address these challenges through traditional means, well, I don't think that would be sufficient. It would indeed be anachronistic. In this situation, therefore, my country regrets that this year, due to the lack of political will and cooperation, the peacekeeping Commission did not adopt a report that would help to improve the peacekeeping operations. Allow me to sketch out some actions which, in Mexico's view, would improve peacekeeping operations. The ongoing context between the Security Council and the countries that host these operations is one of the essential components in order to increase their efficiency. Only in this way will we accurately know the endogenous aspects that have an influence on conflicts, and therefore it will be possible to design realistic and precise mandates. The Security Council must also give peacekeeping operations the right tools, such as monitoring teams with regard to security and climate change, and also monitoring of arms embargoes and support for national authorities. Other innovations could also be part of the support offices that could be established, for example, in Haiti. My country recognizes the importance of regional organizations and sub-regional organizations and the role that they play in mediation and conflict resolution. Coordination and communication with such organizations is necessary in order to promote peace in the farthest corners of the world. With regard to the role of the Peacebuilding Commission as such, Mexico believes that this is a key tool to strengthen the preventive capacity of the United Nations and to avoid a resurgence of conflicts. Therefore, it should play a more relevant role in terms of providing advice and participating in the formulation of comprehensive strategies. And my country also supports the recommendations contained in the Pact for the Future, which have as their aim to promote peacekeeping approaches that will address prevention and that will include the strengthening of the role of women and young people. Madam President, true to our commitment to international peace and security, Mexico hopes to, in the near future, and in coordination with the Department for Peacekeeping Operations, deploy our military engineering company. Thank you very much.
And I thank the representative of Mexico for the statement, of Spain.
Señora Presidenta, España se...
Madam President, Spain would like to endorse the statement delivered by the European Union and make the following comments in our national capacity. Spain is grateful to the Danish presidency for organizing this open debate, which allows us to reflect on the future of peacekeeping operations. Spain would also like to thank Germany for the invitation to the ministerial level meeting on PKOs that will take place in Berlin in May. We'd also like to highlight the relevance of the preparatory meetings held in Montevideo, Jakarta and Islamabad. We support the Secretary General in reviewing peacekeeping operations as was requested by member states, and this was established in the Pact for the Future. It's important that this reform have a holistic vision that includes all aspects of the UN system's work. Recently, work was begun to revise the peace-building architecture of the United Nations. We think this is a necessary process that should be linked to the reform of PKOs. PKOs are fundamental tools for maintaining international peace and security. They are facing ever more complex challenges and must adapt to new realities in order to ensure their effectiveness and implementation of their mandates and protection of civilians. That's why we must stress things such as preparation and training, and also leadership of the missions themselves. Spain is fully committed to these missions, and we would like to continue to play a relevant role, particularly with regard to the tasks of leadership of the PKOs. I'd like to mention in this context UNIFIL, which has the greatest number of Spanish troops under the leadership of General Aroldo Lázaro. The troops in UNIFIL are acting professionally and effectively with total generosity, and I'd like to here express my thanks to them and all of those currently deployed in UN peacekeeping missions for the positive impact that they are having. Madam President, the participation of women in PKOs and the gender perspective in designing them is fundamental, is key. Spain is a pioneer in applying the Women, Peace and Security agenda. We are celebrating 25 years of this agenda this year. It's very important to include the gender perspective in peacekeeping missions. Also, it's important that all efforts possible be made to ensure that the various stages of operations pay attention to the security of troops. For the EU, the UN is essential in developing our common defence and security policy that allows the Union to play a leadership role in promoting international security and in conflict prevention. And that policy is also a fundamental part of the EU's approach to management of crises. The African Union, of course, also plays an important role in complex deployments of peacekeeping operations. Security Council Resolution 2719 of 2023 defines peacekeeping operations for the near future and says that they should receive adequate and predictable funding. Spain is a responsible state that wants to work together in the area of international peace and security. That's why we will continue to support the efforts of the organization with regard to the new approaches to maintaining peace, with regard to prevention, strengthening the role of women and young people, and the growing importance of technology in peacekeeping operations with regard to adapting to new realities. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Spain for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam President, and I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Benelux countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, and my own country, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we align ourselves with the statement to be delivered by the European Union. And I want to thank Denmark for convening this important debate. And thank you to Ms. Jenna Russo for your very clear and practical briefing this morning that can serve as an inspiration for us all. The Benelux countries have been steadfast supporters of UN peace operations, both in mission settings and in shaping policy. We have consistently advocated for stronger, more effective, and more responsive peace operations. The world is experiencing the highest number of conflicts since World War II, leading to rising global threats to peace and security. There is an urgent need to strengthen global peace and security through a revitalized multilateral system with the UN at its heart. Today, as we look to the future, we must ensure that UN peace operations remain fit for purpose in an increasingly complex and volatile world. I would like to highlight 3 key points: conditions for successful peace operations, the importance of sustainable peace, and informed integrated planning. On the first point, UN peace operations need full political backing and flexibility. Peace operations remain one of the indispensable and effective tools for maintaining peace and security and supporting political solutions. But they can only succeed if they receive full political backing of the Security Council, adequate resources, clear mandates, and the flexibility to adapt as conflicts evolve. A more modular and adaptable approach, one that allows for tailored responses based on the specific needs of each situation, will be critical. UN peacekeepers must not, under any circumstances, become targets by state or non-state actors. We strongly condemn any attacks against peacekeepers and reiterate that such attacks may constitute a war crime or crimes against humanity. Second, prevention, peace-building, and sustainability must be at the core. Peace operations cannot be limited to managing conflicts. They must be part of a broader strategy to prevent violence, sustain peace, and build resilience. That means embedding peace-building from the start, as highlighted in the PBC advice for this debate. The Peacebuilding Commission should play a more central role in shaping peacekeeping mandates, ensuring early planning for transitions, and fostering strong partnerships with host states and civil society. My third and last point: integrated planning and data-driven decision-making are key. A truly effective peace operation requires integrated mission planning, guiding the activities of civilian, police, and military components. Peacekeeping intelligence and leveraging robust data and analytics will enable peace operations to be more agile, targeted, and effective in responding to evolving threats. we must look forward to the review of the future of all forms of UN peace operations as mandated by the Pact for the Future. The Benelux countries will continue to actively participate in relevant high-level and technical discussions. Above all, the protection of civilians must remain at the heart of everything we do. Ensuring the safety of those affected by conflict is not just a responsibility, it's the ultimate measure of our success. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Croatia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President. And let me first congratulate Denmark for the able presidency of the Council for this month and for organizing this very important debate. Croatia aligns itself with the statement to be delivered by the European Union, and I would also like to add a few remarks in my national capacity. Peace operations are central to the very idea of the United Nations. In this sense, ensuring that UN peace operations remain adaptable and effective in responding to new and evolving global challenges is a matter of critical importance. The landscape of conflict is shifting. Traditional threats persist, but new complexities arise. Climate-related insecurity, cyber threats, disinformation, and asymmetric warfare demand innovative approaches. As a country that has transitioned from conflict to peace, Croatia understands the necessity of adaptability in peace operations, responding to specific circumstances in which each individual peace operation functions. To advance this adaptability, we must focus on three key areas. First, a mandate-driven approach. UN missions must have clear, realistic, and flexible mandates that reflect the complexities on the ground. Rigid mandates risk inefficiency and failure. Enhanced consultation with host countries and regional organizations can ensure mission objectives remain relevant. Second, technology and intelligence. Modern conflicts require modern solutions. Strengthening the use of digital tools, artificial intelligence, and early warning systems can improve decision-making and operational effectiveness. Investing in peacekeepers' technological capabilities will enhance their capacity to protect civilians and maintain security, while at the same time reducing costs of the mission themselves. Third, partnerships and inclusivity. Peacekeeping must be a shared responsibility. Stronger engagement with regional organizations, local communities, and civil society is essential. Most notably, we must ensure women's meaningful participation in peace processes, as mandated by Resolution 1325, not for the mere sake of gender equality, but for anchoring the peacekeeping and peace-building processes in the lived reality of a given society, by all accounts a prerequisite for sustainable peace. Madam President, our consideration about peace missions would benefit if we included preventive and transitional elements to the immediate post-conflict efforts. In this sense, as Chair and Vice Chair of the PBC in 2023 and 2024, Croatia has been championing national peace-building efforts and national prevention strategies addressing root causes of conflict, and on the other hand, deployment of light footprint missions to make transition smooth and efficient. In conclusion, Croatia reaffirms its commitment to UN peace operations and supports ongoing reform efforts, ensuring missions remain responsive, effective, and aligned with the realities of today and tomorrow. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Croatia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Australia.
Thank you to Denmark and to Foreign Minister Rasmussen for your leadership in convening this open debate. I speak today on behalf of Canada, New Zealand, and my own country, Australia. Peacekeeping represents the best of the multilateral system. The contribution of peace operations to conflict prevention, the protection of civilians, and enduring political solutions is clear. We have many historical successes, and the international community continues to depend on UN peacekeeping as a tool for peace and collective security. But it is also clear that peacekeeping needs to adapt to the complex realities of today's world. With the rise of regional conflicts, erosion of host state consent, and more constrained resources, we must expand and sharpen our toolkit. First, we need to improve trust and confidence in UN peacekeeping. As part of the upcoming Secretary-General's review, we want to see bold new ideas and existing reforms fully implemented. Drawing on expertise from member states and civil society will be key to achieving this. We also hope recommendations from the independent study on the future of peacekeeping prompt a deeper discussion on how to streamline mandates. Secondly, implementing the Women, Peace and Security agenda has never been more urgent. CANS remains committed to women's full, equal and meaningful participation in all aspects of peacekeeping. The evidence unequivocally shows that women's participation strengthens peace operations and the achievement of sustainable peace. We are focused on removing barriers to women's participation, including through the ELSI Initiative Fund, and we urge the UN to integrate lessons learned on safe and inclusive community dialogue to ensure more women are at the peace table. Thirdly, CANS supports more innovative partnership models in peace operations. We have seen firsthand the benefits of regional approaches to peace and security. We support stronger collaboration between the UN and regional organisations, including through Security Council Resolution 2719. Finally, CANS encourages a sharper focus and prioritisation of reform efforts. This includes redoubling efforts to make the primacy of politics the hallmark of peace operations. There is a compelling need to boost the UN's readiness in critical capabilities. People are the UN's most important capability, and to fully leverage this talent, we must prioritise human resource reforms. The integration of technology to drive innovation must also remain a priority. Without enhanced data and early warning systems, peacekeepers and the civilians they are mandated to protect face growing threats, including from weaponised drones and the spread of mis- and disinformation. 2025 offers a unique opportunity to positively shape the future of peacekeeping and peace-building architecture. CANS will work to strengthen the link between conflict prevention, peacekeeping and peacebuilding to safeguard peace gains. We will advocate for concrete solutions which make peacekeeping and special political missions fit for our future. In closing, CANS pays tribute to all peacekeepers, military, police and civilian, serving under the UN flag in the pursuit of peace. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Australia for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Morocco.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to extend my warm congratulations to you on your presidency of the Security Council and state how happy we are to see you lead the work of the Council in the month of March. Also welcome the Foreign Affairs Minister of Denmark and thank the Secretary General of the United Nations for his briefing, which is very illuminating. For 75 years now, several peacekeeping operations have been deployed to help those that have suffered from war. People that have suffered the effects of war and the loss of loved ones. Today, more than ever before, the maintenance of peace is key to protect civilians, create an environment to ensure the success of political processes, to maintain international peace and security more broadly. Peacekeeping, however, is facing security, financial and political challenges, and that's why the Kingdom of Morocco is so attached to peacekeeping as being important for restoring peace, and we will continue with A4P and A4P Plus initiatives in this regard. With regard to the instructions from King Mohammed VI, Morocco has been contributing troops since 1960 within MONUSCO and MINUSCA. My country also deploys experts to UNISFA and UNMISS. Madam President, the strengthening of capacities remains very important to allow peacekeepers before and during their deployments to acquire the knowledge that they need to maintain peace. And my country in 2025 this year will host, together with the United Nations, several training initiatives, FMAC and other training courses. And we also support the Women, Peace and Security agenda. On the 23rd of March, we adopted our own Women, Peace and Security agenda to promote the participation of Moroccan peacekeepers in missions. But there can be no peace without development and no development without peace. And therefore, the review of the peacekeeping architecture is ideal opportunity to build on the dividends of peace brought about by United Nations peacekeeping operations. Morocco, which is vice chair of the CARPBC configuration, will continue to mobilize resources for funding peace-building activities, particularly the funding of the PBF, Peace-Building Fund. And as we now are discussing the future of peacekeeping operations, let me make the following comments. The review of all peacekeeping operations in pursuant to the Security Council resolutions and the Pact for the Future must involve consultation with member states and taking into account their views and comments. The ministerial meeting planned in Berlin next May will be a good opportunity to discuss the current challenges and achievements of peacekeeping missions, and we thank Germany, who will host this conference.
Into English. One delegation, the only delegation amongst all those who spoke at this debate, has mentioned the components of human rights and tried to link it to MINURSO. We too, we have been surprised and astonished by this intervention, as it reflects a masterclass in selective political manipulation. That delegation has suddenly discovered a newfound passion for human rights and international law. Allow me to enlighten their memory with a few realities that are either being purposely ignored or conveniently chosen to be forgotten. First, and regarding its claims, MINURSO's mandate is crystal clear. It was established by the Security Council to supervise the ceasefire. This has been clearly defined by the Security Council, and any attempt by that delegation to distort its role is either misinformed or deliberately misleading. Contrary to what has been suggested, 7 UN peace operations out of 11 do not have human rights monitoring mandates. We ask why that delegation, in a flagrant and selective double standards, focuses only on MINURSO and turn a blind eye to other peacekeeping operations. Allow me to add, the Security Council assigns us mandates based on the specific situation on the ground. It is neither a systematic rule nor an exception. It is a decision made on a case-by-case basis. Furthermore, despite the persistent and desperate attempts of this same delegation last October 2024, the Security Council rejected in block the inclusion of a human rights monitoring mechanism in MINURSO's mandate. This rejection was not accidental. It reaffirmed that the human rights situation in the Moroccan Sahara does not require or does not need such a mechanism. It is a clear message that the Security Council sees through the political motivated maneuver of certain parties. Second, since that delegation seems to be deeply concerned about human rights, let me help them refocus their attention on a far more pressing matter, the Tindouf camps, where the populations live under daily oppression, stripped of their fundamental rights and subjected to severe movements, restrictions, and clear violations of international law. While Morocco has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the promotion of human rights and upholding the fundamental rights and freedoms of all individuals, indeed Morocco has continuously engaged with the special procedures of the UN Human Rights Council, and we have hosted several visits from UN experts and have cooperated constructively in order to foster transparency, dialogue, and progress. Morocco's efforts in promoting human rights are not mere words, but concrete actions aimed at ensuring the well-being and dignity of every citizen. Last but not least, this is third. Once again, that delegation mentioned the right to self-determination, but for them, and in a troubling contradiction, self-determination is a selective concept. It is weaponized as a political tool against Morocco's territorial integrity, yet it is conveniently ignored when it comes to legitimate aspirations of other people who still live under foreign occupation and oppression. The UN must pay attention to all of them without exception or selectivity, including on the territory of those states preaching self-determination for others while systematically denying it to the people oppressed on their own land. The right to self-determination cannot be a political tool wielded selectively, invoked for some while ignored for others. It is not a card played for convenience. Madam Chair, to conclude, I would like to reiterate Morocco's position on the issue of the Sahara. The Sahara has always been an integral part of Morocco. It is Moroccan and will remain Moroccan forever. I thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Morocco for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Brazil.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank Denmark for organizing this timely open debate and the Secretary General and the other briefers for their remarks. Peace operations are indispensable tools of the United Nations for the maintenance of international peace and security. Like in any other tool set, they must be continuously updated to fulfill their purposes. The international peace and security landscape has changed dramatically, as have the dynamics of conflict. We need tools that can be used effectively in this new reality. The Security Council must be able to translate the demands in the field into missions mandates that are clear, achievable, sequenced, and supported by a sustainable political strategy. The primacy of politics is broadly recognized as a main element for successful missions. The report of the high-level independent panel on peace operations presents valuable reflections in this regard. They should be taken into account by member states, especially those with the supreme responsibility of sitting in this council, the Secretariat and missions leaderships. Lasting peace is not achievable nor sustained by military and technical engagements alone. Political solutions must be our end game. Brazil has supported the inclusion of peace-building elements throughout the life cycle of a mission. The idea that peace-building should simply succeed peacekeeping no longer resonates, and an all-encompassing approach is clearly more adequate and now broadly accepted. Sustainable peace requires a comprehensive approach to security, which involves consideration of the root causes of violence, as well as of the social and economic situation on the ground. Brazil welcomes the written advice from the Peacebuilding Commission to inform this debate. The PBC should be better utilized by the Council during the elaboration and renewal of mandates, especially regarding the introduction of peacebuilding elements to these mandates. The Commission's expertise should also benefit host states willing to seek further support for their peacebuilding priorities. Madam President, reflections on mandates should always be accompanied by a responsible assessment on the means of implementation. I would like to highlight 3 points in this regard. First, missions should be able to count on the Council's unwavering political support. A reluctant or divided Council hampers the impact of missions in the field. Second, financial and technical resources must also be made available on a sustained basis. Third, capacity building and training must be prioritized and adapted to new demands and challenges on the ground. Both for the Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin and for the Peacebuilding Architecture Review, we need a holistic approach focused on more coherence in the UN system and stronger commitment by member states. We must better plan the missions and their transitions. Orderly and safe transitions and withdrawals are the path to ensure security and political gains. Finally, stronger partnerships are essential to the future of peace operations. We acknowledge the efforts made by the UN and the African Union to implement Resolution 2719. We also believe that better coordination with the UN, governmental authorities, and civil society is fundamental to ensure the successful implementation of mandates. As a collective endeavor, the effectiveness of peace operations depends on effective coordination both at the political level and in the field. Thank you.
And I thank the representative of Brazil for the statement, and I'll give the floor to the representative of Germany.
Thank you, Madam President. Germany aligns itself with the statement to be delivered by the European Union and with the statement to be delivered by Nauru on behalf of the group of friends on climate and security. I would like to extend my gratitude to Denmark for organizing this timely event. UN peace operations are invaluable tools for the promotion and maintenance of international peace and security. They bring together a unique legitimacy, broad expertise, and effective burden sharing at a comparatively low financial cost. But in light of evolving threats and a changing political environment, peace operations need to adapt to respond to new realities. This need for flexibility is relevant throughout the entire life cycle of a mission. Allow me to highlight 3 aspects for advancing adaptability of UN peace operations that we see. First, the Security Council should adopt clear, sequence, and prioritized mandates while maintaining the UN's normative framework and standards. Mandates need to be aligned with political strategies, which seek to address conflict root causes. A modular approach to peace operations could allow for greater adaptability and lead to more cost-effective and focused peace operations. Second, we need to strengthen the integration of peacekeeping, peace building, and conflict prevention efforts. We have to take into account the needs of and to involving local stakeholders, in particular women, youth, and marginalized groups. Recalling the advice of the PBC to the Security Council for today's discussions, I would like to emphasize the importance of national and local ownership and capacities to sustain peace in transitions. The preparedness of host governments and other relevant national actors needs to be taken into account ahead of any strategic or operational decisions on the adaptation and transition of a peace operation. Third, peace operations should adopt new approaches. These range from the use of emerging technologies in the protection of civilians to the mobilization of innovative peace-building funding. Investing in integrated planning capacities, including in the field of scenario planning and foresight, remains crucial. Madam President, the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin will enable further high-level political discussions on how to make UN peace operations fit for the future. We look forward to high-level participation and substantial pledges. The Berlin Ministerial will also be an important opportunity for us to underline our collective political commitment to effective multilateralism. Let us provide input to the SG's review on the future of all forms of peace operations that was mandated by all of us in the Pact for the Future. Thank you.
And I thank the representative of Germany for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
President, Ireland thanks Denmark for convening this timely meeting. Our thanks also to the Secretary-General and to Ms. Jenna Russo for their briefings. Ireland aligns with the EU statement and the statement of the Group of Friends for Climate and Security. President, we meet today at a critical juncture for the future of UN peace operations. On the one hand, the number of conflicts around the globe is rising. On the other, there's a decline in UN peace operations. And yet, the international community has reaffirmed their value and necessity. Last year, through the Pact for the Future, all 193 member states recognized that UN peace operations are a critical tool to maintain international peace and security. We now have several opportunities to assess progress, learn from experience, and adapt to meet new realities through the review of UN peace operations, the Peacebuilding Architecture Review, and the UN Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin. President, Ireland has a long-standing commitment to UN peacekeeping. Irish participation in UN peacekeeping operations represents the longest unbroken record of any nation in the world. While missions today face compounding challenges, it is important to acknowledge that across the decades, UN peacekeeping has played a key role in protecting civilians, preventing the spread of conflicts and crises, and strengthening state sovereignty. In short, UN peacekeeping has laid the foundations for lasting peace in many parts of the world. Equally, UN special political missions have played an indispensable role in conflict prevention, supporting peace processes and helping nations to rebuild. In Ireland's view, peace operations remain one of the UN's most effective and critical tools. President, as a troop and police contributing country, Ireland has consistently urged that peace operations have clear, credible and realistic mandates. We welcome the independent study on the future of peacekeeping commissioned by the UNDPO, which outlines new models for future operations. Ireland agrees that peace operations should be flexible, agile, and tailored to respond to a range of threats and challenges, drawing on the full range of UN capabilities. Political and community considerations must be at the centre of mission design. We also recognise the importance of strengthening key capabilities, including early warning systems, planning, and leveraging new technologies. More and better community engagement is needed to counter misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech. Further, the UN must continue to insist on and pursue accountability for attacks on peacekeepers and UN infrastructure. Failure to do so undermines not only the implementation of individual mission mandates, but the concept of peacekeeping itself. President, Ireland is pleased to have initiated Security Council Resolution 2594 in 2021. This resolution emphasises the need for peace operations to engage early in integrated planning and coordination on transitions with the host state, national stakeholders, civil society and the UN country team. It is essential that when UN peace operations draw down, they do so in a manner that ensures protection of civilians and strengthens peace building. Transitions bring risk, which the Security Council must recognise and manage by demonstrating unwavering political support to UN missions. We acknowledge too that transition processes are not always linear. They're often complex and influenced by a range of unpredictable factors. Therefore, peace operations must remain flexible and adjust strategies as conditions evolve. They must also fully integrate the women, peace and security and the youth, peace and security agendas. Finally, we believe that UN peacekeeping has a better chance of success when supported by neighbouring states and relevant regional organisations. Ireland fully endorses UN efforts to expand assistance to regional-led peacekeeping missions, including through the implementation of Resolution 2719. Success also requires a solid financial foundation, and we encourage all member states to pay their assessments in full and on time. Reductions in the UN's peacekeeping budget should be redeployed to support peace operations and peace-building objectives. To close, progress in responding to new realities requires bold leadership and creative thinking. We stand ready to work with all member states and stakeholders to strengthen the UN's capability to adapt and respond to new realities, with the goal of reversing the rise in conflict and achieving sustainable peace for future generations. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Ireland for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Cyprus fully aligns with the statement that will be delivered by the European Union, but would also like to make some comments in our national capacity. Allow us first to thank Denmark for organizing this timely debate, and to thank the briefers, also the Secretary General and the representative of the IPI, for their insightful presentations. Allow me, in addition, to express our appreciation for the service of personnel dedicated to the pursuit of peace around the world. At a time when the world faces complex, multifaceted challenges that threaten international peace and security, peace operations have a vital role to play. For decades, they have offered proof that multilateralism works, by helping countries navigate the difficult path from conflict to peace, thus being one of the most effective instruments for conflict mitigation and stabilization. In the face of evolving and divergent crises where peace operations are called upon to move beyond traditional tasks, it has become necessary to enhance their effectiveness and efficiency, but also to bolster global peace and security as a whole. In this context, we must build on our commitments in the Pact for the Future and ensure their implementation. Acting in accordance with international law, including the Charter, and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all member states should not be just a catchphrase, but a deeply ingrained part of who we are, individually and collectively. Cyprus supports efforts to reform peace operations to ensure that they are truly fit for purpose. Improving the performance of peace operations is of strategic importance to be in operational readiness to fully implement their mandate, effectively uphold the resolutions of the Security Council, and prevent the creation of fait accompli on the ground that may hamper the solution of conflicts. They must be sufficiently manned, equipped, and financed, while equitable gender representation is an important component that further contributes to the improvement of their efficiency. Cyprus supports the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda and welcomes the increasing efforts for greater participation of women in UN peace operations. As one of the few UN member states that is both a troop contributor and the host country to one of the longest-running peacekeeping operations in the world, as well as a good officers mission, Cyprus, a victim itself of foreign aggression and illegal military occupation, can attest to the necessity of sustaining a UN force that prevents the recurrence of fighting, contributes to the restoration of law and order, ensures a return to normal conditions, while at the same time promotes the peaceful settlement of disputes. Madam President, in the current global geopolitical context, it is imperative for the UN and the Security Council in particular to demonstrate that there are no double standards in the application of the Charter. The sovereignty and territorial integrity of states under attack must be defended, no matter where the attacks are coming from or how much time has elapsed. The Security Council must stand behind its own resolutions and ensure they have meaning, otherwise the credibility of the international system is severely undermined. It is equally essential to ensure that impartiality for peace operations translates into adherence to the principles of the Charter, the ability to distinguish victim from aggressor, as well as putting an end to any attempts to interfere with their status and deployment. Transparent and sincere cooperation with the host state is a sine qua non. Peace operations must refrain from any action that may affect efforts towards resolving or preempting a political solution to a conflict. Peace operations are ultimately not an end in themselves. They can only create and maintain conditions conducive to the fundamental task of achieving lasting political solutions, including by contributing to sustaining dialogue and promoting confidence-building measures. While they must be sufficiently equipped and supported to fulfill their functions, Member States ultimately bear the responsibility for building and sustaining peace in their own countries, and as such contributing to the maintenance of international peace and security. To this extent, collective efforts are needed to address the root causes of conflicts and their consequences, prevent recurrence, and uphold human rights with no exceptions. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Cyprus for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Armenia.
Madam President, we thank the Presidency of Denmark for convening the Security Council open debate on the theme of advancing adaptability in peace operations with a view to respond to new realities. We would like to thank the Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the briefer from the International Peace Institute for their comprehensive presentations outlining the activities of UN peace operations, challenges in implementing their mandates, and ways to strengthen their efficiency. Peace operations remain one of the most effective tools in maintaining international peace and security. In the context of current geopolitical challenges, including use of force and threats of force, active military buildup, violent rhetoric and disinformation, multinational UN peace and operations may play a stabilizing role, reducing the risk of escalation. In the Pact of the Future, Member States have recognized the interdependence of international peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. Peace operations need to have a proper mandate, capacities, and expertise to address the peace and security issues in a comprehensive manner, taking into account the aspects of human security, humanitarian, human rights situation, protection of vulnerable groups, food security, access to means of subsistence. The Security Council needs to play a tailor-made approach in designing the peace operations in various regions to ensure that their mandates correspond to the realities and security threats on the ground. At various stages of conflict cycle, from conflict management to post-conflict rehabilitation, reconstruction, and peace building, the mandates of peace operations need to be reviewed to address the evolving situation and shift of such activities as ceasefire monitoring, arms control, DDR, life-saving humanitarian needs, to a stronger focus on human rights, long-term socio-economic development, rule of law, access to justice, and reconciliation. We attach importance to engagement of the Security Council with relevant UN bodies and specialized agencies in shaping and reviewing the mandates of the peace operations, with the aim to identify the risks and challenges on the ground and incorporate the humanitarian, development, human rights, and human security perspectives into activities in line with the concept of comprehensive security. Madam President, Armenia has actively contributed to UN-led and UN-mandated peace operations in Lebanon, Kosovo, Mali, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Armenian peacekeepers in the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, alongside their international partners, remained on the ground throughout the recent escalations in Lebanon. Despite the security challenges, they continued to fulfill their peacekeeping duties, demonstrating Armenia's commitment to international security and stability. Armenian peacekeepers in Kosovo continue to contribute to the maintenance of peace and security in Western Balkans. In July 2023, when tensions were high and there was a risk of escalation, Armenia increased the number of its peacekeeping personnel in Kosovo. From its own experience, Armenia realizes the importance of genuine peace efforts to promote peace and stability. As a responsible member of the international community, Armenia will continue its engagement in international peacekeeping and peace-building initiatives and operations, to achieve just and sustainable peace in conflict-affected countries and regions. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Armenia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Romania.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Romania joined the statement to be delivered by the European Union. I would like to express our deepest respect to the UN peacekeeping personnel, brave women and men who work tirelessly for a better, more secure and peaceful world. Peacekeeping has been traditionally the very fabric of the United Nations, at the core of the peace and security pillar, and one of the most relevant tasks of the Security Council. But as the global security context is becoming more fragile, peacekeeping has been tested, and it needs to adapt to new realities. From our point of view, peacekeeping operations remain vital. Their mandates are an expression of our collective political will and part of the solution in addressing armed conflicts, in preventing further escalation and breaches of international law, international humanitarian law, and principles of the UN Charter. Romania has been a committed contributor to peacekeeping, deploying military and police capabilities in some of the most challenging missions, and currently present in 5 out of the 11 UN peacekeeping operations. As we speak, several Romanian officers are on standby, ready to resume their duties in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in South Sudan. Madam President, rule of law activities in peacekeeping contribute to restoring and maintaining security, protecting civilians, and creating the conditions for democratic transitions and sustainable peace. Romania continues to contribute with government-provided personnel to the corrections component of MINUSCA. We are offering capacity-building support for training courses organized by the UN Department of Peace Operations and by hosting yearly specific pre-deployment trainings. By now, Romanian police officers are present in 34 countries on 4 continents. Madam President, there is no alternative to peacekeeping in conflict situations. However, peacekeeping operations should not be used as a substitute for addressing the root causes of conflict. For an increased effectiveness, these operations should have clear but adaptable mandates and timelines, appropriate command structures, and adequate resources based on a realistic assessment of needs and a coordinated approach in the field. Furthermore, the mandate should be regularly reviewed and adjusted in cooperation with the host nation and reflecting the security challenges on the ground. In connection with the UN Secretary General's new Agenda for Peace and the implementation of the Pact for the Future objectives, increased ownership by the host nation is critical and regional support is welcomed, while fully respecting the international law and human rights. The upcoming UN Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin in May, the work of the UN Working Group on Peace and Security, and the ongoing work on the Peacebuilding Architecture Review are key steps. Romania advocates for more accountability for atrocity crimes and also justice for the victims, zero tolerance to sexual exploitation, abuse and sexual harassment, and for the implementation of the Human Peace and Security Framework. All these elements need to be factored in the planning and deployment processes. We do share a common responsibility as UN member states to find the appropriate and timely solutions, coupled with the political will to implement them. These elements are vital for the endurance of the UN's core role in maintaining international peace and security. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Romania for the statement, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Stavros Lambrinidis, Head of Delegation of the European Union to the United Nations.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its member states, the candidate countries North Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, Albania, Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Georgia, as well as Armenia, align themselves with this statement. Madam President, first, let me also thank Denmark for organizing this important debate, as well as the briefers for their insightful remarks. We would also like to take this opportunity to honor, as others have, those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the pursuit of peace. UN peace operations are confronted with increasingly complex challenges, including political resistance, a growing trust deficit among host governments and local populations, and related disinformation campaigns aimed at undermining operational legitimacy and safety. Now, despite these challenges, UN peace operations remain one of the most effective multilateral tools for preventing and mitigating armed conflict, sustaining peace, and responding to the broad range of threats to international peace and security. As such, they require the Security Council's firm support. Madam President, the European Union and its member states are steadfast supporters and direct participants in UN peace operations. We jointly contribute almost 1/4 of the UN's peacekeeping budget last year, and we currently deploy almost 4,000 personnel to UN peace operations. The EU has been a strong supporter of Security Council Resolution 2719, and we support the African Union UN proposed hybrid financing option for the AU Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia as the first test case to implement it. In addition, the EU currently deploys 21 civilian and military missions and operations of its own, some of which were established in parallel to UN missions. There is excellent on-the-ground cooperation between the EU's missions and operations and UN peace operations, whether in the Central African Republic, Libya, or Somalia. The EU-UN Strategic Partnership on Peace and Security is a key strand of our cooperation, and we are currently in the process of reinforcing it by agreeing on a new set of EU-UN joint priorities on peace and security for 2025-2027. Now, all that said, Madam Chair, today we operate in a changing geopolitical environment. We must therefore reflect on the roles peace operations can and should play in order to remain fit for the future. We look forward to the review of the future of all forms of UN peace operations as mandated by the Pact for the Future. The upcoming UN Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin will be an excellent opportunity to continue discussions and to reflect on how UN peace operations can better adapt to the evolving global security landscape. We also look forward to the UN Peacebuilding Architecture Review, and we will engage actively and constructively in order to achieve an ambitious outcome. The European Union also fully supports the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, and recently joined the UN Secretary General's initiative for a common pledge for women's full, equal, and meaningful participation in peace processes. Madam Chair, in closing, thank you once again to the Presidency for taking the initiative to convene today's debate, and we look forward to the upcoming discussions and processes. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Lambrinidis for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank Secretary General for his briefing. UN peace operations remain indispensable tools for responding to diverse challenges for the maintenance of international peace and security. Japan reiterates its commitment to support UN peace operations and calls for the Security Council to consider the following 4 points to make peace operations more effective and adaptable to current and future challenges. First, the Security Council should recognize the importance of a whole of the UN approach, ensuring comprehensiveness and coherence in achieving sustainable peace and conflict prevention, based on the concept of HDP nexus. This approach is important in addressing root causes of conflict, which is a key to prevent relapse into conflict and to sustain peace. In this regard, the Council needs to define appropriate mandate and ensure that exit strategies and viable transition plans are developed from the earliest stage possible, in close coordination with the host countries and other relevant UN entities, including the UN country team and resident coordinators. Second, the Security Council must make sure that peace operations closely engage with host communities. Japan emphasizes the importance of the inclusion and engagement of all segments of society, including women and youth, in the implementation of peacekeeping mandates, and we are mandated in enhancing national capacities for peace building and conflict prevention. Third, the Security Council should more actively utilize PBC. The Council can utilize PBC by requesting and drawing upon its advice more actively and systematically to inform the Council's decisions, including mandate renewals, transitions, and withdrawals. The importance of this coordination was also highlighted in Presidential Note 507, and we welcome that PBC provided its advice for today's open debate. Finally, for the UN peace operations to be more adaptable to evolving challenges, the Council needs to maintain close communication with TCCs, PCCs, and missions on the ground to understand their capabilities and challenges. Japan continues to support training and capacity building of peacekeepers in partnership with the UN and member states. Close cooperation with regional organizations continues to be important, and Japan supports training of AU-led peace support operations personnel through UN Triangular Partnership Program, TPP. Madam President, we look forward to peacekeeping ministerial, the peace-building architecture review, and the review of future peace operations. We hope that views of all member states will be reflected in these processes to enhance UN's role for the maintenance of international peace and security. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Japan for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Guatemala.
Thank you, Madam President. We would like to thank Denmark for convening this debate, as well as thank the Secretary-General and Madame Russo from the International Peace Institute for their important contributions. My delegation would like to endorse the statement to be delivered by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement, and we'd like to make the following comments in our national capacity. Guatemala, as the fourth major contributor of troops and police in the Latin American Caribbean region, has seen the positive impact on the ground of peacekeeping operations. We agree with the concept note for this debate with regard to the need to adapt peacekeeping operations to new realities, taking into account the increase in changing complexity of conflicts, together with the crisis of legitimacy suffered by some missions. To this, we also must add a new challenge, the lack of unity that we see amongst members of this Council in support of peacekeeping operations. In order to address these challenges, we believe it's crucial that the Security Council promote political mechanisms to address the root causes of conflicts, including through mediation and good offices, with a view to establishing sustainable and inclusive peace. That's why it's important to strengthen the focus of prevention and peace building and better use the advisory function of the Peace Building Commission and the synergies with the system agencies and international financial institutions. We also firmly believe that the link between the human rights and peacekeeping agendas offer a singular strategy in order to change the paradigm. In this regard, we feel it's particularly relevant to include meaningful participation of women and young people. They provide unique perspectives and valuable skills that improve our ability to address conflicts in the peace process. Madam President, we must have in-depth discussions on the future of peacekeeping operations. With regard to the review to be carried out by the Secretary-General, we hope that it will take into account the evidence gained from experience in missions, see improved planning for contingents to respond to emerging crises, the promotion of innovation to improve the fulfillment and implementation of prevention-based approaches. Despite the fact that we didn't reach agreement in the recommendations of the C34, we hope that we will continue to be able to count on collective efforts in order to strengthen peacekeeping operations, bearing in mind in particular the commitments arising from the Pact for the Future and the implementation of the Action for Peacekeeping initiative in order to have more effective and successful peacekeeping missions as well as successful transitional processes. Thank you.
Representative of Guatemala for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Vietnam.
Madam President, I thank you and the Danish presidency for convening this important debate. Vietnam aligns itself with the statement delivered by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. Madam President, in an increasingly fragmented and volatile world, UN peace operations remain indispensable in promoting international peace and security. However, evolving conflicts shaped by geopolitical rivalries, non-state actors, and unconventional threats demand new approaches. As a nation with deep appreciation for peace, stability, and development, Vietnam stands ready to contribute to advancing the adaptability of UN peace operations in response to new realities, particularly in the following aspects. First, Vietnam supports the Secretary General's peace-building and peacekeeping initiatives, which emphasize the holistic approach to addressing conflicts and creating sustainable peace. Peacekeeping missions should not operate in isolation from broader political, humanitarian, and development efforts. To that end, coordination within the UN system needs to be strengthened. The Security Council should work closely with the Department of Peace Operations, the Department of Political and Peace-Building Affairs, and other relevant UN agencies to ensure coherence in mission mandates from the outset, as well as to establish long-term governance and development structures before missions complete their mandates. Second, stronger regional cooperation is essential for effective peacekeeping. The UN and the Security Council should therefore deepen collaboration with regional organizations and local actors, whose insights and better understanding of local dynamics can guide more tailored and context-sensitive mandates. In addition, they can provide political and logistical support for UN operations, thus avoiding duplications of efforts. Third, peace operations must be better equipped to address emerging security threats. Modern conflicts increasingly involve cyber and hybrid warfare. Mandates should therefore be adaptable to these changing environments. Enhancing mission resilience against asymmetric threats will improve operational effectiveness. Strengthening early warning system through big data analytics and AI-driven prediction can help mitigate crises before they escalate. Finally, we underscore the significance of Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. Increasing female leadership in peacekeeping missions, incorporating gender-sensitive conflict analysis, and ensuring the protection of women and girls in conflict zones are essential in inclusive peace efforts. In this connection, Vietnam remains committed to promoting the meaningful participation of women in peacekeeping operations, recognizing their invaluable contributions to fostering community engagement and promoting peaceful solutions. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Vietnam for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ethiopia.
Thank you, Madam President. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate you on organizing this important open debate. We are also grateful for the briefing provided by the Secretary General and Ms. Russo. Madam President, in our collective journey to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, peace operations have been central to the promotion and maintenance of international peace and security. This 8-decade-long journey has required us to adapt to emerging challenges and devise tools to overcome impediments. Continuously evolving political and security dynamics have often led us to refine our approach to peace operations. Nonetheless, our efforts to evolve and adapt to the realities of our times still need to answer fundamental questions, both old and new. Incidents of attacks and threats against peacekeepers have been growing in scale, frequency, and complexity. The normative and practical paths to defending themselves and protecting civilians in such situations require conceptual clarity. This must go beyond having a clear mandate, concept of operation, and rules of engagement. This also relates to another persistent operational challenge in peace operations. Securing sufficient personnel with the necessary capacities, adequate resources, and rapid deployment capability has not been a straightforward exercise. The speed, mobility, and flexibility of personnel deployment in the field have also posed constraints on the operational effectiveness of missions on the ground. Discussions on the reform of peace operations should also give due attention to the role of regional and sub-regional peace support operations. Such regional mechanisms, undertaken based on the principles of complementarity and division of labor, play a critical role in advancing the agenda of peace operations. The African Union-led missions are examples of higher commitment to deploy forces on behalf of the international community in asymmetrical and hostile environments. Their role in advancing regional solutions remains indispensable. Despite these challenges, however, the lack of sustainable and predictable financing for AU-led peace operations continues to deter the progress of regional peace operations. Madam President, as important as these discussions on peace operations are, it's essential to look beyond the technical fixes, particularly considering the magnitude and frequency of the challenges at hand. Peace operations can benefit from a review of the political aspects of decisions about when and how to deploy missions. The problems that peace operations aim to address should not be taken as self-evident. The broader structures of global politics should serve as a starting point for the debate on the effectiveness of peace operations. This will enable us to gauge the magnitude of the problems we desire to address through peace operations and develop corresponding mission strategies both in terms of resources and expectations. It will also enable us to design missions that actually reflect these realities rather than relying solely on pre-existing knowledge in peace operations. In light of this, the challenges that UN peace operations face cannot and should not be viewed separately from the broader challenges facing our multilateral system. In conclusion, Madam President, peace operations have provided a mechanism for resolving conflicts by reducing the risk of calamitous escalation over the years. They remain a critical tool for mobilizing the international community to advance the maintenance of peace and security by providing, among other things, a means to further negotiations for a peaceful resolution of conflicts. However, our potential to continue building on these merits entirely depends on how willing and committed we are to pursue solutions that go beyond operational and technical adjustments to address the fundamental challenges we face. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ethiopia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of El Salvador.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We'd like to thank the Presidency of Denmark for convening this open debate of the Security Council and the Secretary-General of the United Nations and the International Peace Institute. We'd like to thank them all for their valuable briefings. Madam President, this is a timely discussion, undoubtedly. The developing conflicts and the changing global situation require that the Security Council drive forward reflection on how we can guarantee the effectiveness of the efforts of the organization when it comes to the maintenance of international peace and security. El Salvador agrees that innovation and reforms of peacekeeping operations must go hand in hand with leadership and political will on the part of member states. The unity of this council is fundamental. No peacekeeping operation will achieve the expected results if this council is divided, if it lacks determination, or if it does not consistently support its missions on the ground, particularly during moments of crisis. In this regard, we believe that the council must redouble efforts in consultation with host states and troop and police contributing countries in order to design clear, realistic, sequenced and achievable mandates. Mandates that preserve the primacy of political solutions and which make it possible for peacekeeping operations to address the changing nature of conflicts and contribute to long-term stability. Madam President, El Salvador reiterates that peacekeeping operations must not be a substitute for efforts to address the root causes of conflicts. That is why it's fundamental to strengthen the complementarity and the coherence within the UN system in order to guarantee more integrated and effective responses throughout the life cycle of missions. In this regard, we recognize the important role played by the Peacebuilding Commission in integrating United Nations efforts, and we urge that its interaction with the Security Council be strengthened, particularly through the request for advice before the renewal of mandates. Also, Madam President, we reiterate that it's fundamental to maintain a multilateral focus when it comes to peacekeeping. Both this Council as well as the General Assembly, through the C34, have fundamental roles to play in this collective effort. Additionally, we believe that today more than ever before, we need a shared commitment that brings on board various actors both within and outside the United Nations. That's why we support that the review on all kinds of peacekeeping operations of the United Nations mandated in the Pact for the Future be carried out in full consultation with member states, particularly with those that contribute police and troops and also with other relevant players. Madam President, In order for peacekeeping operations to effectively fulfill their mandate, it's imperative that the resources assigned to them be proportional to the tasks given to them. Investment in adequate capacity to face complex threats must be increased. This means ensuring from the beginning and throughout the life cycle of missions that we have human resources as well as logistical and financial resources that are necessary. And also, trust building with host countries is essential. National ownership and local ownership should be promoted through solid cooperation, through realistic expectations and communication strategies that counter disinformation and hate speech addressed against missions and peacekeeping personnel. Also, peacekeeping operations have a greater probability of success when they create tangible benefits that are sustainable for local communities. And that's why, based on experience, the experience of El Salvador, we believe that this will, addressing local concerns will increase the effectiveness of peacekeeping missions. Also, security of personnel is very important for El Salvador, and we robustly condemn all threats and attacks against blue helmets, and we support strengthened measures to put an end to impunity and we must guarantee accountability. Finally, we reaffirm our commitment to the full, equal, meaningful and safe participation of women in peacekeeping operations. El Salvador is working actively to bring about balance in the participation of men and women in deployments, and we plan to continue to implement the Uniformed Gender Parity Strategy. Madam President, today more than ever before, peace building requires flexibility, strategic vision and political leadership. And in these efforts, you can count on El Salvador, which currently contributes military and police personnel acting professionally with dedication in 5 peacekeeping operations. That's why we firmly believe that it is our collective responsibility to ensure that UN peacekeeping operations continue to be effective tools in the service of international peace and security. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of El Salvador for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
شكرا السيد الرئيس. أتقدم بالشكر إلى
Thank you, Chair. President, I would like to thank Denmark, which is presiding the Security Council in March. Thank you for convening this very important meeting to discuss the role of peace operations in maintaining international peace and security. Peace operations are a crucial tool for the UN to carry out their lofty goals, conflict prevention and peacekeeping. These operations contribute to rebuilding institutions and protecting civilians, bolstering human rights and providing humanitarian aid. Madam President, given the growing challenges that main regions are facing, we have more than ever a great need for these peace operations. These operations play an essential role in strengthening international peace and security. Peace operations and missions are a crucial tool for a collective security system. They have demonstrated their effectiveness in many missions and sometimes have had less success given the nature of certain crises and given the forces present. These peace operations must remain relevant to attain the goals for which they were established. They must adapt to changes and to the political transformations that may emerge before, during, or after a conflict breaks out. And that is why we must strengthen their capacity for anticipation to allow them to provide effective responses to the various challenges they face, whether political, security-related, or social. In this context, I'd like to reaffirm the need for respecting the sovereignty of host countries. We must listen to the views of these states, especially when it comes to the assessment of the actions and mandates of these missions, as well as their mechanisms. This calls for real coordination and cooperation. Madam President, it is critical to take a comprehensive approach to crises in order to move toward preventive preventive diplomacy to a different response when it comes to an actual conflict that breaks out. If a conflict occurs, we must strive to work toward peacekeeping and then to post-conflict recovery and construction for a lasting peace. Effectiveness is based on addressing the root causes of these conflicts. And the solution is not only military in nature. We need diplomatic solutions that are tailored to each political, social, and economic context, and to each conflict and specificities. Madam President, strengthening the involvement of women in peacekeeping efforts and peace-building efforts is a cornerstone for the lasting nature of this peace. Women play an essential role in bringing together the social fabric and attaining long-term peace. That's why we like to step up the involvement of women at all stages of the life cycle of peace operations, in accordance with Resolution 1325 of the Security Council. The participation of young people is also of vital importance. They are the category, one of the most impacted categories, and they can play a crucial role to bring about positive change. We underscore the importance of coordination and cooperation between the UN and regional organizations. We must also step up partnerships with civil society and other local stakeholders to guarantee the success of peace operations. This coordination could allow us to provide these operations with the tools they need as well as the expertise that they need to be more effective. This also will allow them to have tools to bring about stability and development while respecting the sovereignty of states and their partnerships with these states to attain peace and security. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of Iraq for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the floor. I also wish to thank the Danish presidency for bringing focus to UN peace operation through today's discussions. We gather today at a pivotal moment for UN peacekeeping, an institution that has served as a beacon of hope and stability, and hence it is imperative that we reflect on the lessons of our past and adapt our strategies to meet the challenges of the present and future. At the same time, it's important to underline that any re-evaluation and remodeling of the peacekeeping infrastructure must be rooted in consensus. In this context, I'd like to emphasize on the following key elements. First, UN peacekeepers today have to contend with the presence of non-state actors, armed groups, terrorists, as well as transnational criminal networks. Technological advancements have created new challenges in the form of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, and hate speech, new age weapons, including drones, IEDs, etc. These are but a few new realities that peacekeepers are up against. Second, adapting peace operations to new realities cannot happen unless those on the ground, the troop and police contributing countries, are made part of the mandate formulation process at every stage. Third, countering modern challenges to peacekeeping demands that missions are adequately funded and resourced. Resources need to be commensurate with the mandate. The current state of uncertainty over funding and the mandate resource mismatch is neither sustainable nor comforting nor desirable, particularly for countries from the global south who contribute the lion's share of troops. Fourth, rationalization of peacekeeping missions is essential for the efficient allocation of resources. Redundant missions that continue on political life support without operational rationale only for propaganda purposes divert resources from urgently required peacekeeping missions and undermine the credibility of the UN. Fifth, with respect to peace building by peace operations, Madam President, national ownership should remain the core principle in all peace-building initiatives and activities. We encourage greater coherence and coordination between resident coordinators and the UN entities to support the national peace-building priorities of host states by peace operations, including during the mission transition. Further, we strongly support the WPS and the YPS agenda and greater engagement of the Peacebuilding Commission with international financial institutions to provide financing for peacebuilding activities. Sixth, Adapting peace operations to new realities also involves enhancing the critical role of women peacekeepers, both qualitatively and quantitatively. I'm pleased to share that in February this year, India organized the first ever conference for women peacekeepers from the Global South, bringing together representatives from 35 troop and police contributing countries to deliberate on this key issue. It is no longer a question of whether women can do peacekeeping. Rather, it is about whether peacekeeping can do without women. Seventh, peacekeeping is not a zero-risk effort. Safety and security of peacekeepers must remain paramount. In an era marked by complex conflicts and asymmetric threats, we must ensure that those who risk their lives for peace are adequately protected and that perpetrators of crimes against peacekeepers are brought to justice. Eighth, troop and police contributing countries need to focus on enhancing the capabilities of their personnel to address emerging challenges in order to operate effectively in hostile environments. India is willing to curate and offer courses that address specific demands of modern peacekeeping at our Center for UN Peacekeeping, which has been training national and international peacekeepers for over 2 decades. Ninth, the use of advanced surveillance, communication, and data analytic tools should be integrated into peacekeeping operations to improve situational awareness and rapid response capabilities. India stands ready to share its expertise as a technology enabler in this regard. 10th, even as we deliberate on adapting peace operations to new realities, it's important to acknowledge that peacekeeping missions cannot exist in perpetuity. Missions need to have viable transition plans and exit strategies that ensure that peace sustains. Lastly, peacekeeping cannot be the sole solution to conflicts. Peace holds when peacekeeping operations are accompanied by political solutions. These can only emerge when there is coherence within the UN Security Council. It is thus imperative to reform the Security Council in both categories to make it more reflective and representative of current geopolitical realities. Madam President, India is compelled to note that the delegate of Pakistan has yet again resorted to unwarranted remarks on the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Such repeated references neither validate their illegal claims nor justify their state-sponsored cross-border terrorism. Jammu and Kashmir was, is, and will always be an integral part of India. Pakistan continues to illegally occupy the territory of Jammu and Kashmir, which it must vacate. We would advise Pakistan not to try to divert the attention of this forum to drive their parochial and divisive agenda. India will refrain from exercising a more elaborate right of reply. In conclusion, India, a nation deeply committed to the principles of multilateralism and global peace, has been a steadfast partner of the United Nations in its peacekeeping endeavors, with a history of deploying nearly 300,000 troops across more than 50 missions as of date. We pay tribute to more than 4,000 UN peacekeepers, including 182 Indian personnel, who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the service of peace, and towards that, seek the earliest completion of the memorial wall in their honor. And as we look to the future, India reaffirms its unwavering commitment to UN peacekeeping and pledges its continued support to the UN in its pursuit of international peace and security. Our vision for reform highlights the need for a more balanced, inclusive, and effective approach to UN peacekeeping for an era of limited resources, geopolitical volatility, and upheaval. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of India for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Albania.
Thank you, Madam President. Allow me to start by expressing the appreciation to the Danish presidency for convening this high-level open debate on such an important and timely topic. Albania aligned with the statement of European Union, and from the outset I would like to echo the recognition of UN peace operations as valuable tools for international peace and security. Political support is an essential factor for the success of peace operations, and Security Council bears a significant responsibility, as a divided council undermines its ability to deliver on the much-needed UN presence on the ground. Madam President, coming from the region of the Western Balkans, I would like to emphasize the indispensable role of the UN peacekeeping missions, which stopped the genocide and the ethnic cleansing during the bloody wars in the 90s in Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Kosovo. I take this opportunity to express Albania's gratitude to all men and women who have served and continue to serve in UN peacekeeping operations. Albania has shown continued commitment to international cooperation and peace-building efforts. For the last 3 decades, over 9,000 Albanian military personnel have contributed to peace operations. Currently, with around 300 troops deployed across 8 international missions, the Albanian armed forces continue to support initiatives led by the United Nations, NATO, European Union, as well as coalition with its strategic partners. As we celebrate this year the 25th anniversary of Resolution 1325, Albania recognizes the important role of women in peacekeeping and peace-building efforts. Actually, the Albanian contribution in UNMISS is represented by all female military personnel. Madam President, the increased complexity and the geopolitical changes in the world dictate a strong need for adoption. The Pact for the Future, on which we have agreed last September, emphasizes the need to review all forms of United Nations peace operations. Albania supports the UN initiatives aiming at the increasing of the efficiency of UN peace operations in the future. The fourth UN peacekeeping architecture review is an opportunity to strengthen and refine UN peacebuilding efforts worldwide. The ministerial meeting on the future of peacekeeping to be held in May in Berlin will give the right incentive to this discussion. Distinguished colleagues, it is important to reform the UN approach to peacekeeping, aligning resources with actual needs and ensuring that peacekeeping operations remain relevant and efficient. Therefore, it is essential to periodically reassess each mission's effectiveness and relevance. In this context, let me be clear on Albania's stance that United Nations mission in Kosovo, UNMIK, has long completed its role. Since the mission inception in 1999, the situation has fundamentally changed, with Kosovo being an independent democratic state with functional institutions. A gradual closure of UNMIK would reflect a pragmatic approach to peacekeeping, one that balances cost efficiency with the evolving political realities on the ground. Shifting the focus towards areas where UN peacekeeping could have a more substantial impact is a logical next step to ensure resources are directed where they are most needed. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Albania for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Poland.
Madam President, I would like to thank Denmark for organizing this debate and briefers for their presentations. We align ourselves with the statement delivered by the European Union and would like to raise some considerations in our national capacity. Madam President, UN peacekeeping is a force for good. Poland is proud of its long-standing contributions since our first mission in Korea in 1953. Today, our participation in UNIFIL, the presence of military observers in other UN operations, and our contributions to the Peacebuilding Fund underscore this commitment. In our capacity as Vice Chair of the Peacebuilding Commission, we have consistently taken a proactive role in advancing such efforts. The adaptability of peacekeeping operations relies on a flexible, context-specific approach to both conflict prevention and recovery. To achieve that, the Security Council should ensure targeted and flexible mandates with clear, achievable goals, including well-defined exit strategies and transition plans. Host nation ownership, which entails authorities and societies, effective coordination with regional and local actors are crucial to their success. And so is predictable and adequate funding, which is equally necessary and deserving appropriate practical recognition within the UN Secretariat and missions on the ground, to broaden the sense of ownership of all stakeholders, with the EU member states providing over 40%, or put differently, NATO allies almost 70% of the UN peacekeeping budget. To ensure mission design remains agile and responsive, it is essential to implement adaptive management practices, such as dynamic threat assessments, and strengthen peacekeeping's capacity to address evolving security challenges, including cybersecurity, new forms of violence, and the growing threat of mis- and disinformation. These, by now well-emerged threats, undermine peace operations by destabilizing public perception, sowing division, and eroding trust in the peace process. Operations must be intelligence-informed, with robust accountability mechanisms in place. Ensuring peacekeepers' safety is crucial, as attacks on UN personnel destabilize missions and hinder peace efforts. Madam President, a truly effective approach to peacekeeping demands a systemic perspective that recognizes the inherent interdependence of security and development. It is clear that there can be no sustainable peacekeeping without robust peace-building efforts. This necessitates fostering strong synergies between peacekeeping and peace-building initiatives, ensuring that as peacekeeping operations evolve or draw down, the critical work of peace building continues, cementing gains and preventing a relapse into violence. Transitions are crucial, requiring careful planning and coordination to maintain momentum and build a foundation for lasting peace, which is why I especially welcome the PBC's written advice on advancing adaptability in UN peace operations. Madam President, the Security Council must stand united in its commitment to global peace and security, not despite, but because of the complex challenges we face. Failure to enforce this only prolongs suffering, deepens insecurity, and puts the lives of civilians and peacekeepers at risk. This Council must remain resolute, compassionate, and unwavering in its mission to create a safer, more peaceful world for all. Lastly, I would like to honor those who paid the highest price to UN service, the peacekeepers. Their sacrifices echo in the hearts of those they saved, and their legacy is forever engraved in the history of the United Nations. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Poland for the statement. The representative of Pakistan has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation has been compelled to take the floor to respond to the statement made by the delegation of India. No amount of obfuscation can change the legal, political, and historical reality. Jammu and Kashmir is not and has never been a so-called integral part of India. It is a disputed territory whose final disposition is to be decided by the people of Jammu and Kashmir through a UN-supervised plebiscite, as demanded by numerous resolutions of the Security Council. This disputed status of Jammu and Kashmir is acknowledged by the United Nations and the international community. Every official UN map depicts Jammu and Kashmir as disputed territory. India is under a legally binding obligation under Article 25 of the UN Charter to implement the resolutions of the Security Council and enable the people of Jammu and Kashmir to exercise their right to self-determination. India holds Kashmir by brute force with over 900,000 and troops and paramilitary troops in the occupied territory. India has killed over 100,000 innocent Kashmiris since 1989. It has imposed the densest occupation in history, with one Indian soldier for every 8 Kashmiri men, women, and child. India's gross violation of human rights in the occupied Kashmir have been recorded in 2 reports of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and several reports of the Human Rights Council special mechanisms. Madam President, we also heard a reference regarding terrorism. India raises the bogey of terrorism to divert attention from its violation of international law in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It is most ironic that India, which is committing the worst form of state terrorism in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, is portraying itself as the victim. It is a familiar ploy of all occupiers and colonizers to paint legitimate struggle for freedom and liberation as terrorism. And instead of maligning others for terrorism, India should reflect on its own campaign of orchestrating targeted assassinations, subversions, and terrorism in foreign countries. It is India which supports and finances terrorism against Pakistan through Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, Balochistan Liberation Army, BLA, and the Majid Brigade. Madam President, in conclusion, I would advise the delegation of India to consult the UN map and UN Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir before making baseless statements in the esteemed body. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Peru.
Muchas gracias, señora Presidente.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We'd like to thank the permanent representation of Denmark for the invitation to participate in this important debate, as well as praise you for your diligent work presiding over the Security Council during the current month. We would also like to welcome the participation in the debate of His Excellency Lars Løkke Rasmussen, Foreign Affairs Minister of Denmark. Including the level of adaptability of contingents deployed in peacekeeping operations is central to our multilateral commitment to the principles contained in the United Nations Charter, preventive diplomacy and sustaining peace on the basis of the peaceful settlement of disputes. The support of Peru in the implementation of the new Agenda for Peace and the Initiative Action for Peacekeeping Plus and the United Nations Uniformed Gender Parity Strategy 2018-2028 is ongoing. We believe that recent history shows us that we need to ensure that we guarantee the security of the civilian population over and above any other goal. These actions should be accompanied by efforts to promote resilience in areas affected by conflict, bearing in mind non-military preventive approaches that address root causes. In this context, our work not only requires greater technology to be deployed in military and police operations, but also adequate preparation to ensure that we take care of the environment, that there is energy efficiency, medical care, and social responsibility and gender equality. Since the 70s, Peru has deployed more than 10,000 military personnel in United Nations peacekeeping operations. This is part of a coherent policy of state, the priority aim of which is to protect the civilian population. Currently, we have 265 military and police personnel deployed in peacekeeping operations. To these, we must also add a rapid reaction force made up of 250 personnel with immediate deployment capacity. This group of personnel undergoes constant training, not just military training, but also in the areas of détente and good relations with the civilian population in order to protect them, and particularly in situations where we see a proliferation of armed groups and the deterioration of the rule of law and terrorism. We believe that adaptability should also include the preparation of our personnel in detection and deactivation of explosive devices, given the significant increase in their use by armed groups. I'd like to refer here to the Explosive Ordnance Deactivation Team, EOD, of Peru, working in MINUSCA, Central African Republic, since July of 2022. We're the only country of Latin America that currently contributes a explosive deactivation team to UN peacekeeping operations. And we very much thank the armed forces of Peru for their work, particularly in the city of Boa, locating and eliminating explosive devices of various kinds. This work is accompanied by important awareness-raising work amongst the population affected by this scourge, which has made it possible to ensure the physical safety of approximately 150,000 inhabitants. Their lives are permanently at risk because these explosives have been put in the ground by rebels. I'd like to conclude by reiterating that Peru renews its commitment to the strengthening of preventive and solvent diplomacy through concrete actions and work aimed at ensuring the adaptability of the capacities of military and police personnel currently deployed in peacekeeping operations, addressing the new realities on the ground, as previously mentioned. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Peru for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President. I begin by thanking Denmark for organizing such a timely discussion on the future of UN peace operations. I also extend my gratitude to the Secretary General and to the briefers for sharing their invaluable insights with us. Malta aligns itself with the EU statement delivered earlier in the debate. For nearly 80 years, UN peace operations have been a cornerstone of international peace and security. They have played an indispensable role in supporting peace agreements, protecting civilians, and strengthening governance structures. However, as conflict dynamics grow in their complexity, we need to ensure that peacekeeping efforts evolve to remain effective. As the Pact of the Future underscored, it is imperative that we ensure that peace operations are more adaptable, flexible, and responsive to new realities. Malta is a strong advocate for effective peacekeeping and peace building, particularly in times of transition. During our tenure on the Security Council, we worked to strengthen peace operations by emphasizing the protection of civilians and ensuring that peacekeeping transitions do not leave behind vulnerable communities. Security Council Resolution 2764, penned by Malta, adopted last December and co-sponsored by over 100 countries, highlights the need to facilitate adequate and sustainable child protection capacities in UN peace operations, including in the context of transitions to and from UN missions. Malta is deeply committed to multilateralism. We believe that lasting peace can only be achieved through collective action, strategic partnerships, and a comprehensive approach to conflict prevention, peacekeeping, and post-conflict recovery. With these principles in mind, Malta views the peace-building architecture review as a critical opportunity to think boldly, innovatively, and constructively on how we can strengthen the multilateral system to meet today's challenges. In an increasingly complex geostrategic climate, we must build an architecture for peace and security that is inclusive, resilient, and responsive to the needs of those most affected by conflict. As we navigate an era of new evolving threats, it is crucial to recognize and address the emerging challenges reshaping the global security landscape. The peace-building architecture must be adapted to new realities. In this manner, we ensure that operations remain relevant and effective in mitigating these risks. President, Malta has consistently advocated for a comprehensive approach to peacekeeping, one that recognizes the interconnected nature of modern conflicts. We call for better integration of human rights, gender equality, and youth engagement into peacekeeping efforts. Moreover, peace-building and peacekeeping must extend beyond immediate post-conflict recovery to include governance reforms, development, and institutional capacity building, ensuring that the root causes of conflict are effectively addressed. We recognize the essential role of the Peacebuilding Commission, the Peacebuilding Fund, and the Peacebuilding Support Office in sustaining peace. However, these mechanisms require adequate resources, flexibility, and a strategic vision to deliver real impact. In this regard, Malta strongly supports sustained and predictable funding for peace-building initiatives, particularly those led by women and youth organizations, whose contributions are essential for long-term stability. This discussion comes at a crucial time as we prepare for the upcoming UN Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin and the broader review of UN peace operations. As we reflect on past lessons and shape a forward-looking vision, it is vital to ensure that peacekeeping missions are politically driven, strategically focused, and aligned with the realities on the ground. In conclusion, Malta looks forward to working together to shape a more effective, inclusive, and adaptable UN peacekeeping framework. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Tunisia.
Thank you, Madam President. At the outset, please allow me to congratulate you on presiding over the Security Council this month and convening this important meeting. Peacekeeping operations have helped achieve peace and restore stability in many countries, but our world continues to face several threats to peace and security. In many regions, mainly in Africa, conflicts have multiplied and fragility has increased, thus leading to complex and multidimensional challenges. In light of this alarming situation, we call for greater solidarity and international cooperation to address the drivers of conflict and leverage adequate capabilities and mechanisms to avert conflicts, mainly armed conflicts. Preventive diplomacy must be supported. All countries must mobilize political will to commit to supporting UN peace operations in a participatory manner. Operations must be set up for success through specific mechanisms in full respect of the particularities of host countries and in close coordination with host countries. Adequate funding and equipment must be provided, and logistical and technical capabilities must be developed. Missions will thus be secure, capable of addressing mounting challenges, and adaptable to fluctuating political environments. We highlight the primacy of promoting the security of peacekeepers. We renew our call for required assessments to promote their security and health. We strongly condemn attacks against peacekeepers and call for investigations into these incidents. Tunisia is proud of its effective contribution to UN peacekeeping operations dating back to the 60s. Effective PKOs require assisting countries to stabilize domestic situation and gradually transition from fragility to recovery. This requires a vision that takes into account the interplay of different drivers and threats and must focus on providing guarantees for the maintenance of international peace and security. We underscore the importance of mobilizing the efforts of all countries and responsible actors without exception to prepare comprehensive peace-building strategies with a focus on stronger country capacities and ownership to eradicate poverty and end fighting. We must leverage the outcomes of the Summit for the Future, mainly the Declaration of Future Generations and the new Agenda for Peace. Women and youth must be effectively engaged in all plans and efforts to counter terrorism and violent extremism, promote peace building, achieve stability and sustainable development. In conclusion, we look forward to the upcoming Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin in May 2025 to discuss the future of peacekeeping operations. We reiterate our commitment to the maintenance of international peace and security and the success of all initiatives to end conflicts and wars across the world. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Tunisia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Madam President, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has the honor to take the floor on behalf of the group of friends in defense of the Charter of the United Nations, whose member states express their gratitude for the convening of this high-level open debate on such an important subject, whilst also expressing their appreciation for the briefings received earlier today, including from the Secretary-General. Madam President, in recent years, the mandates of United Nations peacekeeping operations have been changing in scope, from their traditional role of holding ceasefires to a variety of complex tasks that, in many cases, fall within the competence of host states, ranging from the monitoring of elections, the strengthening of the rule of law, the implementation of demobilization, disarmament and reconciliation programs, as well as the protection of civilians, which is, no doubt, a primary responsibility of host states. But there are situations, however, where the intensity of a given armed conflict makes it nearly impossible for states to actually provide for and ensure the protection of their civilians, as is the case in Palestine. In this context, we seize this opportunity to reiterate our call for the provision of international protection for the Palestinian civilian population in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, in accordance with international law, including international humanitarian law, and on the basis of relevant General Assembly and Security Council resolutions. Having said that, we cannot overemphasize that these latest changes in the way that UN peacekeeping missions operate must be approached with great caution and with strict adherence to the purposes and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations in their entirety and interconnectedness, and among others those referring to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, as well as the political independence of states, as well as non-interference in the internal affairs of states. This applies to any measure which may be proposed or adopted as part of so-called preventive diplomacy, which, if recent history is anything to go by, has been misused and abused for the sole purpose of advancing interventionist and rather narrow political agendas. Likewise, the principles governing the general framework of peacekeeping operations, including the consent of the parties, impartiality, and the non-use of force, except in situations of self-defense, must be rigorously observed. Only in this way can the legitimacy and efficiency of the United Nations in the field be strengthened, while guaranteeing at the same time the sovereignty and independence of the nations in which such missions are deployed. This is critical to avoid situations of both mistrust and misperception amongst local populations and/or host countries of peacekeeping missions being misused as tools for meddling in matters that are essentially within their very own domestic jurisdiction. Madam President, we firmly believe that the emphasis of peacekeeping operations should be on the use of their political influence, as provided by the umbrella of the United Nations under which they operate, in order to support the parties to a conflict in the search for peaceful solutions. Therefore, UN peacekeeping operations must avoid at all cost becoming part of the conflict. Similarly, and in contradiction with the affirmation contained in the concept note prepared for this meeting, we consider that UN peacekeeping operations must not be deployed for addressing the root causes of conflicts or for managing said conflicts themselves. Nevertheless, we believe that peace efforts promoted by the United Nations in conflict-affected societies must be accompanied by a simultaneous and sustained effort on the part of the international community to provide, upon request, cooperation and economic assistance aimed at addressing the root causes of conflicts, such as poverty and inequality, in order to ultimately achieve a truly lasting peace. And in this regard, we take this opportunity to highlight the need to pay greater attention to the unintended consequences of the application of the measures envisaged under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter on countries where United Nations peacekeeping operations are deployed, especially the humanitarian implications of such measures, given the need to ensure that the populations of these states subjected to them are not victimized either directly or indirectly or deprived of their own means of subsistence and development. Greater efforts should be made to ensure that such measures implemented in several of the countries where UN peacekeeping operations are deployed do not become a factor that would prolong conflicts and thus further exacerbate challenges on the ground, including with regards to the implementation of the mandate entrusted to relevant UN peacekeeping operations. Moreover, we also stress that the role of UN peacekeeping operations should be oriented towards the affected state, not as victims in need of protection, but as a fundamental and sovereign actor in the definition and implementation of a long-term peace and development project in accordance with their right to choose their political, social, economic and cultural models and their respective national plans and strategies. Madam President, we emphasize that each peacekeeping mission must start with a plan that's fully coordinated with the national government through a clear, realistic and achievable mandate and in consultation with the troop contributing countries. Only in this way can the credibility and efficiency of the mission be guaranteed. We call in this regard for greater interaction between the countries hosting peacekeeping operations, the countries contributing military or police personnel, the Secretariat and the Security Council in the design and implementation of the mandates entrusted to each of the missions, including their exit strategies, in order to ensure that they act in a coherent and concerted manner at all times, which will certainly result in a better implementation of their mandates and the attainment of the established goals. Before concluding, we would like to emphasize that the Special Committee on Peacekeeping Operations, the C34, is the body empowered to address in a comprehensive manner all issues pertaining to UN peacekeeping operations, including those of an emerging nature, as well as the most relevant forum for discussing new concepts and policies or for providing guidance with regards to UN peacekeeping operations. Consequently, we consider that a possible review on the future of all forms of UN peace operations as provided for in Action 21B of the Pact for the Future should be led by Member States within the framework of an inclusive and transparent intergovernmental process under the umbrella of the General Assembly. And finally, we conclude by acknowledging the work of the United Nations peacekeeping operations in spite of the complexities that they face on the ground, as well as their real impact on the civilian population and their positive contributions to the maintenance of peace and security. In this context, we categorically reject any attack or threat against civilian and military personnel of UN peacekeeping operations, while expressing our full solidarity and paying tribute to the memory of those who have lost their lives in the performance of such laudable missions. We stress in this context the importance of putting an end to impunity and ensuring accountability for these attacks when committed against those individuals who on a daily basis demonstrate their commitment and dedication to peace in the field under the flag of our organization, the United Nations. Thank you.
Of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the statement. And I wish to remind all speakers to limit their statement to no more than 3 minutes in order to enable the Council to carry out its work expeditiously. The flashing light on the microphone will prompt speakers to bring their remarks to a close after 3 minutes. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovakia.
Thank you, Madam President, for the floor, and thank you, Denmark, for convening this important debate. Slovakia aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union, and this allows me to be brief and make a few additional points. Firstly, for over 75 years, UN peacekeeping operations have played a crucial role in maintaining international peace and security. However, conflicts became more frequent, more complex, and protracted. We therefore welcome the adoption of the Pact for the Future that broadly affirmed the importance of peace operations. The document also reinforced the need to better link them with political solutions and support them with sustained financing. Secondly, Madam President, Slovakia commends the dedication and commitment of peacekeepers and strongly condemns all attacks against them. Safety and security of the peacekeeping personnel must remain a priority in increasingly volatile environments. The Security Council must take decisive steps in this regard. Thirdly, Slovakia supports regular mandate reviews, more adaptable peacekeeping models, and greater use of peacekeeping intelligence. In this respect, we look forward to the Secretary General's forthcoming comprehensive review of peace operations. We support the recommendations to enhance technology, intelligence, and partnership. Last but not least, Slovakia remains strongly committed to supporting the UN peacekeeping. Slovakia's largest contribution is to the UNFICIP in Cyprus, and it also provides experts to UNSO in the Middle East. In addition, we seek to expand our engagement, including potential demining efforts and helicopter support. To conclude, Madam President, as peacekeeping evolves, Slovakia remains fully committed to supporting adaptable, responsive, and politically supported peace operations that meet today's challenges and contribute to sustainable peace. We will actively participate in the UN Peacekeeping Conference in Berlin on ministerial level. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the representative of Slovakia for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Sri Lanka.
Madam President, at the outset, I wish to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all peacekeepers, including 25,000 fellow Sri Lankans who have been involved in peacekeeping operations for the last 6 decades in the pursuit of global peace. My delegation aligns itself with the statement made by Uganda on behalf of the NAM. As global conflicts grow increasingly complex, multifaceted, and protracted, the UN must continuously evolve to meet these challenges effectively. In this context, Sri Lanka appreciates Denmark for convening this timely debate. The theme Advancing Adaptability in UN Peace Operations underscores the critical need for flexibility, innovation, and responsiveness in our approach to peace operations. Adaptability is not a choice, it's an imperative. From rapidly changing conflict dynamics to asymmetric threats, including terrorism, organized crime, and cyber warfare, peace operations must be agile and prepared to respond to these emerging realities. Most importantly, introducing robust mandates for peace operations is imperative in response to these growing complexities. Such mandates must take into account the needs of all member states and troop and police contributing countries and the priorities and responsibilities of the host countries. It is also important to ensure that the mandates facilitate the protection of civilians while ensuring the operational effectiveness and the credibility of UN peacekeeping. Madam President, peacekeepers are the lifeline in many challenging environments. In order to make UN peace operations fit for purpose, we believe the specialized forces equipped with technology designed to respond swiftly, navigate terrain with agility, and leverage cutting-edge technology to maintain stability and protect civilians are imperative. Such initiatives will also enhance resilience, reduce costs, and minimize environmental footprints, which are essential to overcome the present liquidity crisis and other challenges encountered by peacekeeping operations. Sri Lanka would appreciate opportunities to share its experiences and innovative skills developed by our peacekeepers in this regard. Madam President, gender-inclusive peacekeeping is a critical component of successful peacekeeping missions. Women peacekeepers can bring unique perspectives and skills to the conflict zones. The contributions of women peacekeepers are invaluable, not only in the context of protecting civilians, but also in fostering long-term peace and rebuilding efforts in post-conflict-ridden areas. Sri Lanka also wishes to highlight the importance of addressing the concerns associated with misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech targeting peacekeepers and civilians. We emphasize the need to establish more effective mechanisms at ground level to ensure information integrity. Madam President, in conclusion, Sri Lanka believes the Security Council must consider introducing a transparent and equitable mechanism for selecting troops and police contributing countries on performance, capabilities, commitment, and alignment with mission-mandated objectives while also respecting geographic balance. Such a mechanism is essential to ensure the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations in modern-day conflict-related situations. I thank you, Madam.
I thank the representative of Sri Lanka for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Thailand.
Madam President, at the outset, I commend Denmark for organizing this important debate with increasing challenges to peace operations. Thailand aligns itself with the non-aligned movement's statement. The world is facing heightened levels of threat, violence, conflicts, and instability. To uphold unique and critical tools to maintain international peace and security, peace operations need to be adapted to better respond to existing and evolving realities. Thailand wishes to highlight three following points. First, peace operations must be planned under different circumstances. Peace operations must contain clear, prioritized, realistic mandates resulting from closer consultations with all relevant stakeholders. In addition, predictable and adequate financing to fulfill those purposes must be guaranteed. Scenario-based planning is also essential to ensure a smooth transition and minimize risks from rapid withdrawals or sudden termination of peace operations. To realize this approach, Thailand advocates for innovative dialogues, including tabletop exercises, to share knowledge and best practices, build capacity and enhance preparedness among states and relevant stakeholders. Second, peace operations should aim to address conflicts in a holistic manner. Peace, security, and development are interconnected. Sustainable development is key to creating peaceful societies, reducing people's vulnerabilities, and enhancing inclusivity. Thai peacekeepers are tasked to promote self-reliance through community-led development, fostering a sense of ownership and shared responsibility. With this, we are preventing conflicts from reoccurring while ensuring that peace is sustained. And third, adaptive peace operations require greater participation of women. We firmly believe that women's participation in conflict resolution and peace processes can reduce the likelihood of conflicts relapsing and increase the chances of peace. Our experiences throughout Thailand's past 70 years of peacekeeping operations suggest that women peacekeepers bring diverse perspectives and skills that enhance flexibility and responsiveness of the missions. Their presence on the ground also contributes to community trust and engagement. With this in mind, Thailand is fully committed to increasing the number of women peacekeepers and gender experts in UN peacekeeping operations in line with the Uniform Gender Parity Strategy 2018 to 2028. President, to address current conflicts which are multidimensional in nature, it is utmost important to enhance dialogue and complementarities wherever possible between the work of the Security Council and other UN bodies and entities. Thailand reaffirms its commitment to supporting the UN peacekeeping and looks forward to further discussions on this issue, particularly at the May 2025 UN peacekeeping ministry in Berlin. Now is the time to be innovative, to ensure the continued effectiveness of peace operations in an evolving global landscape. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Thailand for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Paraguay.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President. Paraguay welcomes the holding of this debate, and we congratulate Denmark for chairing the Security Council in the month of March. And we'd like to thank the Secretary General and the Director for their reports. Peacekeeping missions in all their forms are a primary tool for the implementation of the decisions on the most delicate situations that this organization faces, and therefore their effectiveness and efficiency is part of the architecture of peacekeeping that we are reviewing this year. Historically, Paraguay has committed forces to various peacekeeping missions, always coherent with our conviction that the international use of force by the United Nations is a last resort, and that the primary path should be to international peace and security should be cooperation and dialogue. This commitment has an impact, and that therefore we seriously see our responsibilities, and we support peacekeeping missions in situations of conflict. It's also important for these operations to be effective so that they can continue and the results can be seen even when the mission withdraws. The efficiency of a peacekeeping mission is a temporary thing, and its capacity it must have a capacity to produce a region without conflict once it leaves. This is essential for political stability, and particularly it's important that women are fully involved in the peace process and the normalization of life in those countries affected. Resolutions on women, peace and security and youth are very valuable today. And Madam President, we also believe that the path to lasting peace and the provision of humanitarian assistance is to ensure that all parties are listened to and that there is maximum coordination of resources. It's important that all parties work together. The Pact for the Future reaffirms the importance of peacekeeping missions and the need to adapt them to the complex situations that we are seeing. And it's important to address the root causes of conflicts. Madam President, The presence of Latin American and Caribbean countries in UN peacekeeping operations over the years has been continuous and relevant, particularly missions on our continent. That's why it's important to reaffirm the conditions that allow for this participation and the importance of efficiency and solidarity. We are committed to these missions and to our region, and we are currently chairing the peacekeeping operations of the UN for our period, for the period 2024-2025, and we're organizing the third regional conference in Asuncion this year in November. We need to improve the adaptability of PKOs. It's very important that military staff have linguistic skills necessary to fulfill their tasks in the country where they are deployed. We would also stress that the more critical infrastructure is attacked in a country, the harder it is to bring about peace. We don't want peacekeeping missions to worsen conflicts in any way. We would conclude by stating that the review of the work of the organization, particularly post-2030, is more important than ever. And we must address development in countries and ensure that missions are properly funded, to ensure that they can be efficient, to bring about peace, and, if necessary, be reconfigured for post-conflict situations. Thank you.
The representative of Paraguay for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United Arab Emirates.
Madam President, I would like to thank Minister Rasmussen for convening this debate. We thank the Secretary General for his valuable insights this morning. We also align ourselves with the statement delivered by Jordan on behalf of the Arab group, and we align ourselves also with the statements of the group of Friends of Climate, Peace and Security. Madam President, UN peace operations face an increasingly complex web of challenges requiring us to embrace innovative solutions in line with today's requirements and people's aspirations for stability. It is necessary to enhance the adaptability of peacekeeping operations, providing rapid response and be flexible in the face of unforeseen circumstances such as natural disasters, humanitarian, political or social crises. In this regard, the UAE would like to recommend 3 ways to bolster the resilience of peace operations. First, mandate flexibility is key, especially in light of the complex and uncertain circumstances of today's world. In this regard, we urge the Security Council to consider modular mission frameworks that incorporate emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, as recommended by the Future of Peacekeeping study issued last year by the UN Department of Peace Operations. This approach will not only enhance missions' ability to adapt to changes, but it would also ensure their continued effectiveness and relevance in addressing future challenges. On the other hand, mandates should have clear objectives and defined goals with the ability to adapt to rapid developments. Rigid mandates that lack clear and specific exit strategy may prolong missions without achieving tangible or sustainable goals, thus draining human and financial resources and diminishing confidence in these operations. Therefore, peacekeeping mandates must allow for periodic adjustments and evaluations, including the gradual reduction or reorientation of operations when necessary to align with actual needs. Second, the Security Council must incorporate strategic communications into the mandates of UN peace operations and ensure implementation at all levels, locally and internationally. This requires a proactive approach to providing accurate and timely information and countering false narratives which could distort their image or obstruct their work, as well as exacerbate the risks of the spread of hate speech and violence, which could jeopardize the safety of peacekeeping forces. Here I would like to refer to Security Council Resolution 2686 on tolerance, international peace and security, which highlights the importance of strategic communications as an effective tool for peace building. I urge its full implementation, including the establishment of procedures within peacekeeping operations to monitor and periodically report on hate speech, racism, and extremism. Third, we need to listen hardest to the voices of those that are closest to the conflict, affected by the conflict. This includes regional parties, given their familiarity with cultural and social context, their practical experiences, and their close relationships with relevant parties. We need to promote holistic peacekeeping strategies that engage and involve all host countries' stakeholders on the ground, particularly women and youth. Their participation is essential for sustainable peace that will extend for generations to come and reflects the aspirations for a better future. In conclusion, we must move beyond the constraints of a one-size-fits-all approach, which may not meet the needs of each individual case, and instead adopt a modern and dynamic framework based on flexibility, integration, and creativity. This framework is the way to ensure that peace operations remain effective, viable, and adaptable to a rapidly shifting landscape. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of United Arab Emirates for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Timor-Leste.
Thank you, President, for giving me the floor and organizing this high-level open debate. We align ourselves with the statement delivered by Uganda on behalf of non-aligned movement. President, esteemed members, and distinguished delegates, Timor-Leste deeply appreciates adaptive peacekeeping's pivotal role in fostering sustainable peace and security worldwide. In the rapidly evolving landscape of global conflict and their dynamics, traditional peacekeeping approaches often encounter significant challenges. Contemporary realities such as hybrid threats, cyber warfare, climate-induced displacement, and the proliferation of non-actors require a more flexible and responsive framework within UN peace operations. Timor-Leste recognizes that adaptability is not mere a strategic advantage, but a fundamental necessity for the effectiveness and legitimacy of peacekeeping missions in the 21st century. We understand that the bureaucratic and operational system often impedes peacekeeping operation within each mission. It requires strict observation and often limits them from making proper and professional adaptation in the field. Simple psychological issues like fear of losing their jobs or financial cuts force them to worry more about mitigating adaptation and risk than working on adaptation itself. This needs attention as each peacekeeping operation is equipped with a specific mandate. Our journey to sovereignty has underscored the importance of adaptable strategies. The transition from protracted conflict to fragile peace in Timor-Leste highlighted the need for peace operations to be agile in addressing diverse sectors, including security, governance, and socioeconomic development. This multifaceted approach is essential in addressing the root causes of conflict and ensuring long-term stability. Furthermore, integrating local perspectives and capacities is crucial in enhancing the adaptability of peace operations. Timor-Leste advocates for the partnership model where host nations actively contribute to designing, implementing, and evaluating peace missions. Such collaboration ensures that interventions are culturally and contextually appropriate and empowers local institutions to sustain peace beyond the presence of international forces. Investing in capacity building for peacekeepers and host nations is imperative to advancing adaptability. Continuous training and professional development tailored to emerging threats and complexities can significantly enhance the responsiveness of peace operations. Also, fostering innovation by adopting new technologies and methodologies can provide peacekeepers with a tool to navigate the intricate dynamics of modern conflict effectively. Timor-Leste also emphasizes the importance of robust mechanisms for monitoring and evaluation. Establishing adaptive feedback loops allows peace operations to learn from on-the-ground realities and adjust strategies in real time. This iterative process fosters the culture of continuous improvement and ensures the missions remain relevant and practical amidst changing circumstances. Moreover, ensuring adequate resources and political support is vital for enabling adaptability. Flexible mandates and sustained funding streams empower peace operations to respond swiftly to unforeseen challenges without compromising their core objectives. Timor-Leste supports the efforts to conduct further studies on the mandate and future adaptation of UN peacekeeping frameworks to improve the continue providing and necessary support to enhance its adaptive capacities. The path to advancing adaptability in UN peace operations lies in embracing flexibility, fostering collaboration, investing in capacity building, and ensuring sustained political and financial support. Timor-Leste stands ready to contribute its experiences and insight to this collective endeavor, reaffirming our commitment to a peaceful and secure world. Let us work together to transform the resilience of our peace operations, ensuring they are equipped to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow with unwavering efficacy, adaptation, and compassion. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Timor-Leste for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Myanmar.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I wish to thank the Danish presidency for organizing this important debate. I also thank the Secretary General and Ms. Rousseau of IPI for their presentation. Madam President, UN peace operations are critical multilateral tools in the promotion and maintenance of international peace and security. As global conflicts become more multi-layered and complex, involving armed violence, smuggling of weapons, and transboundary threats, peace operations should adapt to their evolving nature to achieve their objectives. Fundamentally, peace operations should be guided by people-centered strategies, galvanized by political will, and enforced in a timely manner. Myanmar reaffirms the importance of clear, realistic, and achievable mandates in consultation with host countries, troop and police contributing countries, as well as with local actors. Myanmar would like to request the Secretary General to consider the role of local partnership in his forthcoming review of the UN peace operations. In Myanmar, the breakdown of rule of law and political institutions, the rise of corruption, and the prevalence of insecurity after the illegal military coup in February 2021 has turned the country into an epicenter of cyber crimes, human and drug trafficking, in addition to the tremendous suffering of the people. Since then, over 6,400 people have been killed by the military, more than 3.5 million people has been displaced, and almost 20 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance. I am dismayed to note that Myanmar currently has the highest level of organized criminality in the world, according to Global Organized Crime Index. It is crystal clear that urgent global interventions are long due to address the root cause of the situation in Myanmar, along with the surge in transnational organized crime. I thank our neighbors for their crackdown and rescue efforts. However, it must be highlighted that military junta, along with its affiliate border guard forces, are creating safe havens for criminal syndicates in the first place by providing security for them and facilitating their operations. Therefore, we are of the view that such interventions should be comprehensive, sustained, and multidimensional, addressing the root cause of their proliferations and involving all relevant stakeholders. In their statement in January this year, the National Unity Government and Allied Federal Democratic Forces of Myanmar expressed their readiness to cooperate with international efforts and work towards the restoration of justice and governance while combating the escalating crisis of cybercrimes and human exploitation. Madam President, I have repeatedly pointed out these alarming developments in my statement to the Council and relevant UN meetings. The situation in Myanmar is indeed impacting the regional peace and security. Despite the gravity of the situation, the Council continues to dismiss any attempt to forge actions. Despite the urgency of the situation, Council continues to be inactive. Despite their growing evidence of threats to regional peace and security, the Council continues to fail to perform its primary responsibility. Despite this frequent plea from the people of Myanmar to help them and save their lives, the Council continues to ignore their voices and fail the people of Myanmar. Over 4 years since the coup, the Council has adopted one resolution on Myanmar with no follow-up to it, nor the review of its implementation, nor a regular reporting mechanism. Every passing day, the Council fails to act decisively. More civilians are indiscriminately killed by the military junta, more atrocities are committed, and more innocent victims worldwide are lured by these surging scam operations. The lack of effective and coordinated actions by the UN on Myanmar is creating immense frustration among the people of Myanmar. Their frustration turns into indifference. Their indifference will eventually grow into distrust of the UN system. We have serious concern that this will have a major implication in any future partnership between the UN and Myanmar when the country undergoes peace building, reconciliation, and recovery efforts. Clearly, we need the whole of UN system to work for the people of Myanmar by listening attentively to their voices and aspirations. In conclusion, Madam President, people always look at the UN for how far the UN can serve the people. And that is the way the UN is judged for its credibility and relevancy in international order, especially in the maintenance of international peace and security. Myanmar views the importance of fostering trust with local actors for a more robust and tailored response in peace operations. Local and national ownerships are integral to supporting peace operations across the full speed continuum, from preventive measures to peacekeeping and post-conflict recovery. For Myanmar, achieving sustainable peace should be centered on listening to and acting in line with the will and the interests of the people of Myanmar. The people are loud and clear. They are determined to end the military dictatorship and build a federal democratic union. Therefore, I wish to urge again the Council to act decisively by cutting the flow of weapons, jet fuel, and dual-use items to the military junta so that the people of Myanmar can meet their aspirations. And thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Myanmar for the statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Bangladesh.
Madam President, I thank you and the Danish presidency for organizing this high-level open debate and also for successfully steering the work of the Security Council. My delegation aligns itself with the statement of the NAM. Madam President, this open debate is being held at a critical time when we are witnessing increased number of conflicts in different parts of the world. In this context, the need for UN peace operations is indispensable in maintaining international peace and security. However, we must admit that the peacekeeping operations need to adopt innovative approaches considering the changing political landscapes and multidimensional global challenges. For Bangladesh, ensuring the safety and security of the peacekeepers is of paramount importance. As a co-chair of the group of friends to promote accountability for crimes against peacekeepers, we emphasize on holding the perpetrators accountable even after the drawdown of the missions. Madam President, as a member of PBC, we are confident that its advice to the Council would effectively guide in addressing the challenges of peacekeeping operations. In addition, we wish to highlight the following points. First, for peacekeeping operations to be effective, the Security Council must ensure the well-calibrated mandates that are crucial for the ultimate success of the operations. This should be realistic and aligned with the ground realities. Inclusive consultation among the Security Council, the Secretariat, and the TPCCs should be ensured. Views of the TPCCs should be reflected while taking decisions on operations or bringing any change in the mandate of existing missions. The national authority and other stakeholders in the host countries should also be taken on board, especially while setting the mandate. Second, given the acute financial crisis being faced by the UN, the Council needs to resolve the issue to ensure the sustainability of the peacekeeping operations. Third, as the proponent of Women, Peace and Security agenda in the UN, we call for increasing participation of women peacekeepers in missions. Finally, for improvement of the overall performance of peace operations, we call for equitable geographical representation both at the field and at the headquarters. I thank you, Madam Chair, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Bangladesh for the statement. There are still a number of speakers remaining on my list for this meeting. I intend, with the concurrence of members of the Council, to suspend the meeting until tomorrow, 25th March, at 3 p.m. The meeting is suspended.